Hey everybody, Giant Skyhawk here, and I am finally bringing you my 2021 November post-Burst of Destiny Fluffal deck profile. I think this deck is very, very, very underrated and very underplayed. I genuinely think this is the strongest rogue deck in the format, and I highly recommend you learn, and hopefully this video will help. I'm going to do a more brief overview of the specific choices in this list, why I think this deck is very good in the Burst of Destiny format, especially with the very interesting new tool that we have, and then I'm going to go over some test hands and demonstrate some combo stuff, and then I'm going to go into some matchup tips to help you deal with the metagame and how to sequence plays. So without further ado, I'm going to hop into the profile and we'll get started. So 43 cards, I'll explain the numbers behind that afterwards, but I'd say that's about the maximum you can play. Specifically Gardens is what allows us to do that. So first up, we've got 3 Fluffal Dog. Dog is when this card is normal or special summoned from the hand, you can add an Imp Sabres or a Fluffal monster from your deck to your hand, except for Dog. And you can only use this effect of Fluffal Dog once per turn. Pretty solid normal summon, definitely one of your best hits off a vendor. If you're new to this deck, you should absolutely be playing 3 copies of Dog. There are maybe some lists that could play 2 if you're getting like really, really spicy, but in general, you should be playing 3 of this. Next up, we've got 3 Fluffal Bear. Bear's got 2 effects, and notably it's level 3, so no rank 4 shenaniganry here. First effect is you can send this card from your hand to the graveyard to set 1 toy vendor directly from your deck to your spell and trap zone. Galatea-esque effect, excellent consistency piece. And the second effect is that you contribute this card from the field and then target 1 Polymerization in your graveyard and add it to your hand. This comes up a lot less, but it can come up, especially if you've gone through all of your polys. So do keep in mind that if you've run out of toy vendors, Bear is still useful to have in deck to snag a poly back if you've run out of them. But keep in mind that it is only 1 effect of Fluffal Bear per turn and only once that turn, so do make sure that you're managing what you need to use and when. If you are new to this deck, play 3 copies of this card. There are some lists that can play less, and I'll maybe get into those in another video, but do keep in mind that if you are new, play 3 of this. It's an excellent consistency tool. Next up, we have definitely the all-star of the main deck, and that is Fluffal Penguin. Penguin is a water level 4, and for those of you who are experienced in Bahamut shark shenanigans, you know where this is going. If you have ever played Hero before, this is very much in that vein of card, but it's like if they were good. So Fluffal Penguin is a combination of Solid Soldier and Liquid Soldier. So the first effect is during your main phase, you can special summon a Fluffal monster from your hand except for a penguin. This effect can only be used once while this card is face up on the field. The funny thing about the specific wording of this text is that this effectively makes Fluffal Penguin a soft once per turn card. So if you bring back another Fluffal Penguin, you can use that penguin's effect because it is a different copy of Penguin. So keep in mind that this is something that we're aiming to abuse as we're comboing and keep looping through. And the second effect is the Liquid Soldier, where if this card is sent to the graveyard as a fusion material for a fusion summon of a Frightfur Fusion monster, you can draw 2 cards and then discard 1 card. This one, unfortunately, is just a hard once per turn, but this is very strong. This is one way to start combos. This is a way to dig for more interaction. It's a way to just like draw more cards. This is also an excellent way to chain block the effects of your fusion monsters to make sure that they resolve when you're going second or going first, depending on what you're trying to do. So being able to time this properly and use it effectively is super relevant. You absolutely must play 3 copies of this. You cannot play any less of it. Next up, we have the one-ofs. Dolphin, you could maybe play it too, and I'll explain that maybe another time, but Dolphin is the level 4 water partner in crime to Penguin here. We're using it to make Bahamut Shark. So the first effect is this. You can target 1 toy vendor in your graveyard and set it, and if you do, send 1 Fluffal monster or 1 Edge Imp Sabres from your deck to the graveyard. This is a custom card. The fact that this can send wings is very silly. Sending sabers to set up toy vendor plays is very also silly. And you can also send any Fluffal name that you want to add back with something like an octopus. So Dolphin is like very, very powerful, but it also has a lot of utility. Part of the reason we're only playing 1 is because in order to get the maximum value out of Dolphin, you do have to have that vendor in the graveyard, but depending on the type of list you're playing and what you've got in the extra, you could move it to 2. The second effect does come up but less, kind of like a bear, so do keep it in mind. But if this card is sent to the graveyard as fusion material for a fusion summon of any monster, by the way, so do keep that in mind, you can shuffle into the deck one of your fusion spells or polymerization spells that is banished or in your graveyard. You can only use each effect of Fluffal Dolphin once per turn. This is useful for situations where you need to get a poly back in your deck in order to resolve a patchwork, because for patchwork to resolve, you have to have a poly to search. This is also useful if you want to recycle something like a Frightfur Fusion. So for example, there are some funny tricks with chain you can do that I will get into in the tips section of the video, but do keep in mind that this is also another way to chain block effects if you use this as material. Most of the time you will not be doing that, but do keep it in mind. So I would say for beginners, play 1, but if you are really finding you want access to it more, you can bump this up to 2 and play with the ratio a bit. Next up is Fluffal Wings. This is another custom card that they just randomly printed. This is Engage on Crack, level 1 fairy. If this card is in your graveyard and you control Toy Vendor, you can banish this card from your graveyard, then target one Fluffal monster in your graveyard, banish it. And if you do, draw 1 card. Then you can send one Toy Vendor you control to the graveyard, and if you do, draw 1 card. Hard once per turn, but this is like if Pot of Greed was also getting you a search. It's like Engage, but you draw 2 cards and pick 1 instead of draw 1 card and pick 1. Very, very silly. The reason we are only playing 1 is because we have Octopus, which can put it back. And really, Wings is something that you want to get to when you either have protection for it or when you need to extend. It's not often something you want to like engineer your combo to start with unless you have something like a Gamma in hand to make sure that it resolves. You can play 2 if you feel like you're wanting to see it more, but because Dolphin can send it, Octopus can put it back, and you have a lot of different cards in the deck that can search it, like Dog and Foolish Burial Goods. In general, I'm perfectly fine with 1 here. And again, like I said, we can put it back. But very, very strong card, so play around with ratios and see what works for you. So next up, we've got Fluffal Sheep. Sheep is a level 2, very deceptively strong. If you control a Fluffal monster except Fluffal Sheep, you can special summon this card from your hand. This is not once per turn, and it is not an activated effect. This is a summoning condition, so no Apo or monster negate shenanigans to stop the sheep here. This being a free summon is very nice. It turns Dog into a 1-card link too, with Dog add Sheep. But Sheep's second effect is a lot of very free value that is also a very interesting combo enabler. So you can return 1 other Fluffal monster you control to the hand for cost, and that is relevant sometimes. Special summon 1 Edge Imp monster from your hand or graveyard. So you basically just put a Fluffal back in your hand, and then you immediately replace that body. This is useful for summoning back a chain from the graveyard, to make a rank 4 or just use as link material, or to summon a chain from your hand to get it out of your hand and link it off to then search your patchwork with the effect of chain. So this comes up in a lot of very interesting and different scenarios. So keep in mind that you can use this to trigger chain and to use chain as a rank 4 piece. Again, this is a card where you only really want to like get it when you want it, so you'd only play 1, but some more link spam oriented decks might play more of it. But right now, I really like 1. Next up is probably my favorite main deck Fluffal, and that is Fluffal Octopus, level 1 water. When this card is normal or special summoned, you can target 1 Fluffal or Edge Imp monster in your graveyard and add it to your hand. This is a very extremely key part of your combos because you want to make sure that you end your turn with an Edge Imp Scythe in hand so that we can pop an Artifact Scythe on our opponent's turn. Octopus is the way to make sure that we get there, because if we don't see it, we're going to search it with Patchwork and we might have to use it as fusion material, so Octopus gets that back for us. This is also very good recovery, as a lot of the time we'll end on Cross Sheep, so on our opponent's turn when we fusion summon, we can use Cross Sheep to summon back that Octopus. So being able to grab any individual piece that you need is very, very sick. You can also play 1 for 1 to enable this if you want, but this version of the deck doesn't have much room. The second effect is very unique, and I think it adds a lot of complexity to how you set up your end board and play through a couple of different interactions. So the second effect of Octopus is that if this card is sent to the graveyard as a fusion material for a fusion summon of a Frightfur Fusion monster, mouthful right there, you can target up to 2 of your banished monsters, return them to the graveyard. Both effects hard ones per turn, but you'll notice there's no real restriction on that second effect. You can return any banished monster. So, for example, you could return something like the Wings that you have banished on the previous turn, so that on your turn 3, you can use the Wings again to draw cards and get a vendor search. Or you can put back something like an Artifact Scythe that has been banished by a Cosmic Cyclone, and then you can pop a Dagda on your opponent's turn to summon back the Artifact Scythe. So that's a trick for if your Artifact Scythe gets banished somehow. Another cool thing you can do is you can put back something like a Driver, and then clear your own Fusion to keep a Gamma in hand live. That can come up in the grind game sometimes. Or you can put back a banished Sabres that you had to use for Fusion material so that you have an extender in your graveyard and you reload your access to Tiger. So Octopus is very, very, very good at managing resources, and it's definitely something that you want to keep in mind. I would only ever play one of this. I would never play two, but it is something that you want to go and get when you need it, and it can be extremely life-saving. While I'm here, one other cool trick you can do with Octopus. Octopus add back Sheep is really, really sick because the Sheep can just summon itself again, because guess what? Fluffal Octopus is a Fluffal monster you control. And then you can do silly stuff like the Sheep bounce the Octopus to revive something on turn 3 like a chain, and then link them off to search Patchwork, and then you can use the Octopus as fusion material to put the wings back in grave. These all like flow into each other, so I really think Octopus is very strong. That's it for the main deck Fluffals. There are a couple of other ones you could consider, but I will maybe go over those in another video because the purpose of this one is to teach you how this specific iteration of the build works. Stuff like Cat or Owl could be playable depending on the format and depending on the goals of your extra deck. So next up, we have got 3 copies of Edge Imp Chain. This card is unbelievably strong. It has 2 effects, and you will only ever activate one of them. Being level 4 is relevant here because you can sometimes use this to make rank 4 plays with Sheep. So firstly, when this card declares an attack, you can add 1 Edge Imp Chain from your deck to your hand. Why does it do this? I don't know, but if you brick, keep it in mind, I guess. The second effect is the really, really strong one. If this card is sent from the hand or field to the graveyard, you can add 1 Frightfur card from your deck to your hand. This is very, very, very strong. Being able to add Patchwork obviously is the main reason you will do this, but there is added utility in being able to add cards like Repair or Frightfur Fusion. Patchwork being able to be searchable is just very, very strong. And opening something like a chain, you have lots of ways to get it out of hand. Poly can get it out of hand, Vendor can get it out of hand, Bear. You have a lot of ways to discard it and get the effect. It's also, again, a very good way to chain block. This is the only Edge Imp that has an effect that you can activate when you fusion summon, so you can use the Edge Imp Chain in your chain to make sure you order stuff properly. Funny thing is, you can only use 1 Edge Imp Chain effect per turn and only once that turn, so in the off chance you activate the attack effect, you actually can't perform the search, so do keep that in mind. If you are new, play 3, but some players might opt to play less in specific builds, but I would say you should play 3. This is a very strong card. Next up, we're playing 1 Edge Imp Sabres. Those of you familiar with Sekka's Light BA or Cherubini Turbo lists might know what this card is. It is Plague Spreader Zombie, but it's not a tuner and it doesn't banish itself. So it's a level 3. If this card is in your graveyard, you can place 1 card from your hand on top of the deck. Special summon this card in defense position. You can only use this effect of Edge Imp Sabres once per turn. Obviously, it's a generic extender. We also play 1 because it gives us access to Frightfur Tiger, which I will go over later. But learning how to properly use Edge Imp Sabres is one of the key ways to improve at this deck a lot. Edge Imp Sabres stacking cards on top of the deck is super, super strong for Toy Vendor. Because it basically ensures that whatever you stack on top of the Toy Vendor is what you're hitting with the Toy Vendor. So keep in mind that you can use the stack to your advantage. We only really play 1 because you only really need 1. You can always put it back with Octopus if you have to banish it for something like a Tiger, and it's super accessible. Dog can add it, Vendor can add it, Dolphin can even send it for you, Patchwork can add it, Chain can get Patchwork, which can get this, so you only need the 1, it is very accessible. Next up, we're playing 2 Edge Imp Scythe. This is a very, very unique card, and it is actually part of the reason why this deck is very strong right now, going first or second. So during your opponent's main phase, as a quick effect, you can reveal this card in hand and fusion summon a Frightfur Fusion monster from your extra deck, using monsters from your hand or field as fusion material, including this card in your hand. So a few things. This is one of the main parts of the end board when you are going first. You want to make sure you have one of these in hand, so you can summon a Frightfur Cruel Whale, which destroys one of your opponent's cards, and your own set Artifact Scythe. So what's cool about that is that while it is a board piece, this also incidentally acts as a hand trap if you see it with a Fluffal. And very unique hand trap at that, because it summons a body that also clears one of your opponent's cards. But this card is also Balinks, so the second effect is, if a Frightfur Fusion monster or monsters you control would be destroyed by battle or card effect, you can banish this card from your graveyard instead. This does not activate, so it's very, very incredible protection for fusion monsters, and it means if you want to keep your Cruel Whale on the board when using Edge Imp Scythe as a hand trap, you can banish the Edge Imp Scythe instead of destroying the whale, so you can keep your big bungus on the board. Or you can choose to clear the whale and keep this in graveyard as protection for next turn when you're moving into your opponent's board. So having that utility is really strong. Importantly, both of these effects are once per turn, even the not activated one. So do keep in mind that you can only use the protection effect once during a turn. I play 2 of this. I know it's the meme. You want to see it some of the time, but not all of the time. But the main reason that I am on 2 is because in case your hand necessitates not being able to go through Octopus, you want to have a chance to just see this naturally, and you want to try to like see this mid combo so that you can use your resources on other stuff, like using Octopus to add back a Penguin to use as fusion material with the Edge Imp Scythe, or using Octopus to add back stuff like Chain or Sabres, or even Bear or Dolphin, depending on the specific situation that you're in. So you play 2 as well because it's just often incidentally a hand trap. You could side the 3rd one if you wanted, or you could main the 3rd if you want to focus on like a blind second build. But I think 2 is a really, really good ratio. I have been quite a big fan of 2 here. So before I explain the rest of the monsters, I think I am going to explain Gamma. So Gamma is very strong. It's the only hand trap that I'm maining. It's just like a very strong hand trap right now in general. Clearing a body is really good, but Gamma is super, super strong going first. It's very excellent protection for your plays. We can do a lot without committing to the summon. You can do stuff like a Bear, pitch Chain, add a Patchwork, and then, I mean, obviously Patchwork you can activate with none. But Foolish Burial Goods to send a vendor to add is very strong. Our Penguin's Garden here, which I'll get into later, is another effect we can resolve with no monsters on the field. And as well, the Wings you can resolve if you go Bear Wings without having a monster on the field. So Gamma is very, very punishing if your opponent decides to interact with you. So strong hand trap, good, and like at worst, it's free discard fodder for Toy Vendor. So I really like Gamma. If you are sick to death of drawing Driver, you can try Triple Tactics Talent, but I would recommend Gamma if you're learning first, because Gamma is one of the main defenses this deck has against Droll and Lockbird, which is a big weakness. I really like Gamma. I highly recommend it. Then we've got Artifact Scythe. Scythe is part of the win con. You are popping it on your opponent's turn again with the Edge Imp Scythe into the whale, and you can set it from deck with Dagda. Also, sometimes drawing this card is very funny, and we have a way to deal with this if you draw it off a vendor and it gets discarded to the graveyard. I'll get into this here, but we're going to talk about Toy Vendor first. So I'm playing 3 copies of Toy Vendor and 3 copies of Foolish Burial Goods to find it. Toy Vendor is just an absurdly silly card printed in a time when hard once per turn simply did not exist. It's a continuous spell. First effect is once per turn, you can discard 1 card and draw it and show it. If it is a Fluffal monster, you can special summon 1 monster from your hand. Otherwise, discard the card you drew. To people who are maybe inexperienced with this can seem like a very neg effect, but it's actually very strong. Having discard outlets in this deck is very good, specifically for getting rid of stuff like other copies of Toy Vendor, or your Edge Imp Chain, or I'll get into this in a sec. But the discard outlet itself is very strong. Hitting something off of the top, it doesn't have to be a Fluffal monster. Again, you can hit stuff like Golden Lord, Sabres to extend, a Chain to get a Patchwork, or something like a Repair. There are lots of good hits that are not Fluffal monsters. And the other thing too is if you hit a Fluffal, you can special summon any monster from your hand. So if you want to keep a Fluffal in hand, you can summon a Driver or a Dead Gamma, you can summon an Edge Imp that you don't need, any monster that you have, you can special. So keep in mind that you're not locked into summoning the card that you drew. You can even, if you hit something like a dog and you have a Penguin in hand, you can special the Penguin so that the Penguin can then special the dog. You don't have to summon the card you draw with Vendor. So do keep that in mind. And that is soft once per turn, so if you have multiple copies of Vendor, you can do multiple discards. This is also the thing that synergizes with Sabres, is that you can stack a card on top. With the Sabres, discard a different card, and then draw the card you stacked so that you know exactly what you're hitting with the Toy Vendor. The second effect is not once per turn at all. If this card is sent to the graveyard, you can add 1 Edge Imp Sabres or 1 Fluffal monster from your deck to your hand. Very strong, and very frequently you can resolve this 4 times in a turn because of how Dolphin works. Being able to use this to add any individual piece you want is very strong, and that is why we are playing 3 Foolish Burial Goods. Foolish Burial Goods is often just better than drawing Toy Vendor, which is why we're on 3 of it, even though it's hard once per turn, specifically because it sets up the Vendor in graveyard for the Dolphin. Opening this card is good, drawing it mid-combo is good, Foolish Burial Goods is just unbelievable. My friend Outback YGO, who likes to lab this deck with me, has frequently said that if we could play 6 copies of Foolish Burial Goods, we probably would, and I don't even think that's an exaggeration. It's that strong. So to pair up with these, we have 2 copies of Eldlich the Golden Lord. And for the uninitiated, you might think, Skyhawk, what the hell are you doing with this? I promise you it is insane, and I will show you a clip from the MBT subathon later that displays how ridiculous this card is. And before I get into it, shoutouts to Action YGO. I will have their video on this linked in the description. As far as I know, they were the first person on YouTube to post about playing this card in Fluffal. So big shoutouts to them. This is a brilliant idea. I was very skeptical at first, but it is so good. If you don't know what Golden Lord does, you can send this card and a spell trap from your hand to the graveyard and target a card on the field and send it to the graveyard. So going second, this is excellent removal, especially paired with something like Toy Vendor. So going second, you can go Golden Lord to send the Toy Vendor, targeting a card your opponent controls, either to fiend and negate or to send it. Then you can activate the Toy Vendor effect to add a copy of Fluffal Bear. Fluffal Bear can then set another copy of the Toy Vendor, and then you can use the second effect of Golden Lord, which is that you can, if this card is in your graveyard, you can send a spell trap you control to the graveyard, add this card to your hand, then you can special summon a zombie from your hand. And if you do until the end of the next turn, it gains 1,000 attack and defense, and it can't be destroyed by card effects. So, going second, if you see this with Toy Vendor, you pitch it with Vendor to remove a card, then you get the bear to set a Vendor. You Golden Lord to send the Vendor to special a 3,500 beat stick, and then you Vendor search. So you've gone neutral on advantage, you've removed a threat from your opponent, either in the form of a card or a negate, and you have a big indestructible beat stick. Very, very strong. But this card is also an incredible extender going first. If you see this card with Dog or Bear or Vendor, you can just go Vendor effect, discard Golden Lord. If you hit anything off the top, great. If not, you'll go Golden Lord to send the Toy Vendor to summon itself to search Dolphin, and then Dolphin to set that Toy Vendor to send Wings. You link off the Golden Lord and the Dolphin into a link to, and then that is your target in the graveyard for the Wings. Golden Lord is good to draw a late combo. It is good to draw, it is good to open. It is good to see going second. So I really, really like this. If you don't like opening 2 Golden Lord, you can swap one out for a Foolish Burial, because Foolish Burial does have interesting utility with the rest of the list in stuff like Sabres or Wings. But I really like the 2 Golden Lord because it's very good going into the Sword Soul matchup, and I will explain that a bit later. So there's that. Next up, we have got 3 Frightfur Patchwork. This card is unbelievable. It is engage, but you get to pick both of the cards. It's just a straight up +1. Add an Edge Imp monster and a Polymerization from your deck to your hand. You can only activate 1 Frightfur Patchwork per turn. That's important because if they negate the activation of this card, you can activate a second one. Praise be to the word activate. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is very silly sometimes. This is obviously strong. It's an incredible play starter. Being able to add Poly gets you started with plays and can make sure that you dig through cards with your Penguin. And it also gets you guaranteed access to that Edge Imp Scythe. If you don't have Edge Imp Scythe in general, you should be using this to add the Edge Imp Scythe to make sure you have access to it, because that is the part of the very unfair part of the win condition in Artifact Scythe. But there are instances where you, going second, you will search something like a Chain to add a Frightfur Fusion to just keep going off with fusion plays and clear boards, or to OTK. And there are times when you'll get Sabres if you want to have access to Tiger to just drop an absolute bomb. Play 3 of it. You should never be playing any less. It doesn't matter that it's hard once per turn. Card is just unbelievably stupid. Next up is probably a hot debate right now. I am playing 2 copies of Polymerization. You can test with a third, and I may move to the third because opening it against some matchups is just really, really strong. But it can be a bit bricky, so it depends on your overall ratios. Poly is just good. It gets you access to your fusion monsters, which are all very, very strong, and we'll go over those in a bit. So you can try 2 or 3, mess with it, see what works for you. There's no like right answer. It depends on your other ratios, your extra deck plan, your sideboard plan. Lots of different things can go into how you want to play this. You can try playing the 2 and then siding one of a different alternate art. Shout out to Mr. East for that tip. And that way, when you side in the third copy of the Poly, you can see how often that third copy is beneficial to you or messes you up. And then you can see how you want to build the deck that way. So I am playing 2. I would try 2 for now, but do think about 3 if you decide to go on a heavier fusion package. I'm going to get into this a bit later. So we're going to go with the one-ups here. Frightfur Fusion. It is searchable Miracle Fusion. Fusion summon a Frightfur monster from your extra deck by banishing fusion materials listed on it from your field or graveyard. It's hard once per turn, so we only play one, and you technically play 7 copies of it through itself, Chain that can search it, and Patchwork, which can search Chain, which can search Frightfur Fusion. So playing 7 copies of it, you only really need the one. And if you're really desperate for it again, you can snag it back with the Dolphin, like if you hit it off a toy vendor or something. So keep that in mind. Very strong for OTKing. It is occasionally a very useful combo piece, so keep in mind that you can use it in that way. Next up, we have Frightfur Repair. This is an extender that you can send to the graveyard from your extra deck while you're comboing. It is 1 effect per turn once per turn, which is why we only play 1, but both effects are relevant. First effect is you can target a Frightfur Fusion monster in your graveyard, return it to the extra deck. Then you can special summon a Fluffal or Edge Imp monster from your graveyard. There are some very funny tricks you can do with this when you open this, such as Whale sending a fusion, and then activating this to return that fusion to summon something like a Penguin to keep spamming. Or if you have to like link off a Whale or clear it off and you open this, you can just recycle your fusion to revive something from grave. This one comes up less, but do keep in mind that it does exist, and you can search it with Chain for some very specific lines that I'll probably get into later. So keep in mind that that exists, but the main effect you'll be using is that you can banish this card from your graveyard to special summon a Fluffal or Edge Imp monster from your hand. This is super key for extending late combo, and it's super key for pushing through hand traps, like stuff like Valor on a normal summon Penguin, for example. Being able to fuse and then send a Repair to summon more monsters from hand is really, really invaluable. And again, Whale sends this from deck as a quick effect, so on your own turn, you have access to Repair pretty much whenever you want it, so long as you can fusion summon. Then finally, Called by the Grave, because hand traps suck. This is a fine interaction to draw mid-combo. There are lots of very interesting things you can hit with this too. Stuff like a Vashuda or specific Drytron monsters, so definitely keep in mind that this card is very strong. And then finally, this is the new tool that Burst of Destiny gave us, and this is a doozy. We are playing 3 copies of Royal Penguin's Garden. And you might be thinking, Skyhawk, what the hell are you doing with Penguin support? May I remind you that we are playing a Penguin in this deck, and this Penguin happens to be very, very strong. Continuous spell, here's the lowdown. When this card is activated, you can add 1 Penguin card from your deck to your hand, except Royal Penguin's Garden. Yep, you heard that correctly. Konami has printed us 10 key for the best monster of the deck. I don't know why they did not exclude Fluffal Penguin from this list, but thank you very much to the Yu-Gi-Oh gods for this one. This is very strong because it means your vendor searches can often be cards other than Penguin. So you can get more utility stuff like the Wings, the Bear, Dog, Dolphin, Sheep, or Octopus. So more frequently, your searches can be non-Penguin cards, which is good for just diversifying how you're setting up your board. The second effect is excellent both for creating more 2-card combos and for extending through hand traps. Once per turn during your main phase, you can decrease the level of 1 Penguin monster in your hand or face-up field by 1 until the end of this turn, then discard 1 card. You can only activate 1 Royal Penguin's Garden per turn. This effect is very cool, so you can do this to add a Penguin, and then if you have something like a Chain and literally nothing else in your hand, you can reveal the Penguin, reduce its level to 3, discard the Chain, and then go Chain search Patchwork, add Poly and Sabres or Scythe, whichever you want. Then you can fuse with the Penguin and the Poly, and then Penguin can draw you into more plays. Or you can just hold the Edge Imp Scythe and the Penguin in hand as your interaction, depending on what you've got in your hand. The fact that this enables that 2-card combo is really sick. The other cool thing here is there's another 2-card combo you can access in the form of Royal Penguin's Garden and Toy Vendor. You can go Royal Penguin's Garden to add the Penguin, you reveal the Penguin to reduce its level by 1, discarding the Toy Vendor, and then go Toy Vendor, add the Dolphin. You can then normal the Penguin, special the Dolphin, Dolphin to set the Vendor, send the Wings. Here you can't make the Bahamut Shark because your Penguin is going to be level 3, but if you also have a second Penguin in your hand, or another way to access that second Penguin, you can normal summon the level 4 and keep the 3 in hand to use as fusion material. And if you use the level 3 as fusion material, it then becomes level 4 again when it's in the graveyard. So do keep that in mind. But again, like, this is just very strong, because like if there's something like, if you get normal that Penguin and you get like impermed on Penguin, you can do like Gardens, reveal another Penguin, discard a Chain, or discard a Vendor to dig for more extension. You can just like fuse away the level 3 Penguin, and then it's level 4 again, and you don't have to worry about it. So that is something that's very cool. It's just a very strong card. You can play 2 of this because it is hard once per turn, but I think that this card adds a level of consistency, power, and resiliency that this deck has needed for quite a long time, and again, just the ability to play through interactions. As well, it is also an additional send for Eldlich the Golden Lord and for stuff like Forbidden Droplet, so keep in mind that this extra card advantage is actually super valuable for you. There are also some very funny tricks you can do. Like I have in the past, in order to enable a Frightfur Fusion, gone Garden, reveal a Penguin to pitch a Sabre so that I could banish it to summon Tiger with a Frightfur Fusion. So keep in mind that there are some like very silly other tricks you can do. There's also some repair shenanigans. I love this card, Royal Penguin's Garden. You can try 2 if you are frustrated with drawing multiples, but I really, really like it, so I would try 3. 43 cards. The reason that you can go this high partially is because Garden is a higher consistency way to play more Fluffal names without actually playing more Fluffal names. So the math works out that you see your Fluffal names more frequently because of Garden, and you are also managing a lot of hard ones per turns in this deck. Even though the toy vendor itself is obviously crazy, the Patchwork is hard ones per turn, the Gardens is hard ones per turn, the Foolish Burial Goods is hard ones per turn, and the Chain and the Dog are. They're cards you want to see, but you kind of want to have like a wider playable hand of cards instead of seeing a lot of multiples. So I think playing it at 43 kind of gives you a lot more space. You can play around between 40 and 43. There are cuts you can make to the deck to adjust it in that way. But I have really, really liked it at these ratios for now. Format may necessitate some changes, but I really like this list a lot. So that's the main. Now we'll move to the extra. Start with the fusion monsters. This extra has a very clean 5-5-5 ratio that I really like, but there are so many tech options for the extra. So keep in mind that you can play a whole host of different stuff. Play around with the format, play around with tools you like. I think in a separate video, I will go over a lot of different extra deck tech you can play. So first up, we have got 2 Frightfur Cruel Whale. This card is unbelievable. It is a level 9 water fusion. Requires 1 Edge Imp monster and a Fluffal, so for this deck it's quite generic. It's got 2600 attack and 2400 defense. The first effect is, if this card is fusion summoned, you could destroy 1 card on both players' fields. Very strong, super good for clearing cards. When we're going first, we're using this to destroy our own artifact Scythe and a card our opponent controls, to then lock them out of the extra deck on top of clearing a problematic card that they have. Again, using that Edge Imp Scythe to fusion summon on our opponent's turn. Something of note is that this effect is not once per turn. So if you summon another Cruel Whale, you can destroy more cards. Going second, you can do cool stuff like destroy your own copy of Royal Penguin's Garden or destroy a toy vendor. And again, if you have to destroy your whale, you can banish the Edge Imp Scythe instead of destroying it, because whale does not target. There's also some other cool tricks you can do where if you've got like a Golden Lord that is protecting itself by the effect of Golden Lord, you can have whale attempt to pop your Golden Lord and your Golden Lord won't be destroyed. You can do stuff like pop a Dagda if you hit a Scythe off of toy vendor, and then you can trigger Dagda to summon back the Scythe. So whale having the utility of being able to pop any card is really, really good, and it's one of the best shells for the artifact Scythe win condition. The second effect is also really sick. It's an OTK tool, and it's also extension. So once per turn as a quick effect, you can target target any fusion monster you control. Send 1 Frightfur card from your deck or extra deck to the graveyard, except for a Cruel Whale. And if you do, the targeted monster gains attack equal to half of its original attack until the end of this turn. Notably, the attack gain happens equal to half of the original attack of the targeted monster. So if you target whale, it will gain 1300, half of 26, so it will boost itself to 39. If you target something like a Kraken, it will gain 1100 and it will go to 33. So that's how that works. Something else to note is that this can target any fusion monster. So if you decide to play Triple Tactics talent and you take control of like a Makaba or any other fusion monster that exists in the format like a Winda, you can boost that monster too. So keep in mind, there are some funny situations where that can come up. I've taken Purgatrios before, it's very funny. But the other thing that this does is this sends Repair. So when you're going first, when you fusion summon that Cruel Whale, you can send the Repair to the graveyard as an extender. The other cool thing you can do again is you can go whale to send one of the fusion monsters, and then you can activate the Repair to return that fusion to the extra and monster reborn. But usually you're just sending it to grave. The other thing, this is also not once per turn, so you can boost multiple cards you control or send multiple cards to the graveyard. Whale sending a fusion monster also comes up. If you want to link off the whale and then Frightfur Fusion, you can banish the fusion you sent to go Sabre-Tooth to revive the whale, but we'll get into that in a bit. I play 2, but sometimes I want the third. You can always put another one back with the Repair or the Toad if you feel like you will need the third over the course of a game. Or, depending on your list, you can just play the third whale. It's a very, very strong card, and it's removal, combo enabling, OTK tool, everything you could ever ask for. And incidentally, a hand trap too. You just edge Imp Scythe, drop the big whale. I like 2, but you can try 3. Next up is Frightfur Kraken. This is like one of the randomly expensive pieces in the deck, but if you look at the main deck, especially with Eldorado printing the Golden Lord again and the Gammas, this deck is very inexpensive. You can play this on a budget. Kraken is like one of the randomly expensive cards. It's like $10, $15 randomly for no reason. It is a level 8 water. It requires any edge imp and any Fluffal, and it is 2200 attack and a big whopping 3k defense. 3 effects on this thing. Once per turn, you can target one monster your opponent controls and send it to the graveyard. This card cannot attack directly the turn this effect is activated. So, this is soft once per turn, importantly, and that is relevant for something I'll show you in just a second. But the main thing is that this is access to non-destruction removal in the extra deck natively within your engine. This deck accesses all different types of removal. You have non-targeting destruction, you have targeted non-destruction removal, you've got the access code if you decide to play it a lot, and you have the Tiger for just like mass removal. So the utility pieces that you have access to are really sick. This card can also just make a second attack during each battle phase. So this is an amazing OTK tool for going second. You can just clear a board, slap down a Kraken and some other stuff, and you've got game. And then if for some reason your opponent is not dead, once per turn at the end of the battle phase, if this card battled, you can change this card to defense position, and then you've got a 3k wall just chilling out. But most of the time your opponent will be dead. The thing here is, being soft once per turn, this card cannot attack directly the turn this effect is activated. So if we had a way to bring it back, enter Frightfur Sabre-Tooth, another level 8 fiend, 2400, 2000. It requires a Frightfur Fusion monster and 1 or more Fluffal and or Edge Imp monsters. So it requires a Frightfur Fusion monster, but you can then use whatever else you got, pretty much. So when this card is fusion summoned, you can target a Frightfur monster in your graveyard and special summon it. So at the cost of a Poly and a Frightfur, at the cost of a Poly and like an Edge Imp or a Fluffal, you can just bring back the fusion monster used as material, or a different one. All Frightfur monsters you control also gain 400 attack. So if you've got 2 fusions, it's an extra 800 damage you've got on the board. Incidentally, this card is also towers. If you use 3 or more fusion materials with it, it can't be destroyed by battle or card effects. This can be very difficult for some decks to get over. So keep in mind that in an emergency, you can just plop this in defense, use a bunch of materials to make it, stall out the game for a little while till you draw enough pieces to make damage. Importantly, this brings back stuff like the Kraken, which means the Kraken can either use its removal effect again if you need to clear more of the board, or your Kraken can attack directly. This is important because Sabre-Tooth and a Kraken on an open board state is actually exactly 8,000 damage. The Sabre-Tooth boosts itself to 28, the Kraken is boosted 26, and when the Kraken attacks twice, 26, 26, 28, exactly 8,000. You can also bring back stuff like Whale to do extra boosting, or send extra cards. You can revive stuff like Tiger, which also has an attack boost effect we'll get into, but it's very good. In this condensed kind of combo-oriented build, I would play 1, but blind second lists probably want to be on more copies of Sabre-Tooth. Next up, we have the bomb of the extra deck, and that is a Frightfur Tiger. Tiger is level 6, 1900 attack, 1200. It specifically requires Edge Imp Sabres, but it uses 1 or more Fluffal monsters. When this card is fusion summoned, you can target cards on the field up to the number of fusion materials used for its fusion summon and destroy them. Just an unbelievable effect. And again, we have a card in Frightfur Fusion that lets us use as many materials as you want to summon it. So you can just absolutely slap it down. This card like destroys back row. If they don't have the Imperm or the Chalice, their whole board is gone. It's super good going second into boards by hard activating Poly. And again, you can chain block this effect if you summon it with Poly using cards like the Penguin, the Dolphin, or even the Octopus. So keep in mind that you can like usually make sure that your Tiger resolves. The other thing to keep in mind too is that all Frightfur monsters you control gain 300 attack for each Fluffal monster and Frightfur monster you control. So if you've got 2 fusions and like any Fluffal, that's probably enough damage to do game. So keep in mind that sometimes you can just summon a Tiger, spam a bunch of Fluffals, and just attack for game. Because the Tiger like can regularly boost up between like 900 and 1500 attack depending on the board state. You only play 1. In previous versions I played 2, because incidentally it can come up as a combo piece, but we just don't have the space. And the other thing is that you can only control 1 Frightfur Tiger. So keep in mind that if you decide to play multiple, you have to link off one or remove it in some other way before doing stuff. It's also incidentally a combo piece, like I mentioned. You can use it to pop your own toy vendor turn 1. And there are hands where you gotta do what you gotta do, so keep that in mind. So we'll move to the extra deck. The 2 probably most important Xyz monsters, move on to the extra deck. We are in the extra deck. The 2 most important here are Bahamut Shark and Toad, obviously. We all know what Bahamut Shark does. You make it with Penguin Dolphin, you summon the frog. Toad is particularly stupid in this deck. I mean, it's dumb in any deck that can make it, but obviously being a negate, like an Omni Negate, is really good. Frequently, because of how Penguin Dolphin works, you can summon this turn 4, like summon 4 or 5 almost all the time. Especially now that Gardens is a thing to make it more consistent, and Golden Lord is also a thing to make it more consistent. Because when you use Golden Lord to send a vendor to get your Penguin Dolphin live, the Toad ends up being summoned 5 instead of summoned 4. So Nibiru, we don't care. But the other thing is being able to add back any water from the grave is super powerful. If you don't have a Fluffal in hand, you can use this fusion material for the Edge Imp Scythe. Toad gets you that material. So if you have to use a lot of your resources to extend into the board, Toad gets the card to use this with the Scythe. And the Penguin itself on your opponent's turn is drawing more cards. Just very, very silly. And as well, you can add stuff back like Dolphin if you need to extend combos more. You can add back an Octopus if you want to add something specifically back and you didn't end on the Cross Sheep. You can put a Cruel Whale back in your extra deck. And there are some scenarios where if you just end on the Bahamut Shark, you can put the Toad back and force your opponent to deal with the Bahamut Shark before they can really do anything else. They have to like clear that in order for it to not be a threat when you go into the next turn. So Toad, very, very strong. You can play lists that make multiple Toad, but I find it actually clogs the extra deck, and most of the time, you don't need double Toad to win the game, at least not in this format. Next up, we've got Abyss Dweller. I would say you should probably be playing this card right now. It's actually quite good against Sword Soul, specifically the Tenyi variant. If you can turn off stuff like an Ashuna in the graveyard, or a Vashuda, or an Adhara, it's very, very good, especially if you set it up after like breaking their board. Being able to turn off their recovery and their board clearing is really sick. And they have a couple of other graveyard effects you can turn off as well. The important thing to know about this too, you can frequently just add it to your end board. And if it has a water material attached, which we've got some waters here that are level 4, all water monsters you control gain 5. Your Toad, it's now 27. Your Cruel Whale, boosted by its own effect, is 44. Your Kraken, 27. Your Penguins and Dolphins, they're 21. You're playing some real beefy waters, so keep in mind that you can use Abyss Dweller to pump out more damage sometimes. Next up, we have the Tornado Dragon. This is a flex spot for sure, but it's a good backup way to pop the Artifact Scythe. This deck is quite good at making rank 4s. You can usually make 2 over the course of the turn. So if you don't see Edge Imp Scythe, Tornado Dragon's a backup way to have that win condition happen for you. It's also just incidentally a combo piece, again, because it can pop Toy Vendor, and it's just good back row removal. There are a lot of matchups where just ending on a Tornado Dragon is super strong to just be able to snipe back row. So do keep in mind that it's good. It is a flex spot, but I quite like it this format. This is definitely one of the more flexible slots, and I'm not sure if I'm going to continue playing it, but there are situations where it is just completely invaluable. This is number 60 Dugares the Timeless, and this is maybe, but what like this is probably my favorite rank 4 of all time. Shoutouts to Lagi and Dolka, but this card is so funny. We use all 3 effects very well. So the first one is you can detach 2, skip your next draw phase, and draw 2, discard 1. Obviously, it's good for digging for more gas, and we don't really care about the draw phase that much because we can usually draw cards with Penguin, so it's kind of an oh crap button if you really need to find some kind of interaction, but it's also a discard outlet, so if you need a way to discard that vendor or that chain and you don't have a way to do it, Dugares will get it done for you. The second effect too can turn 2 bodies into 3. because you can go Dugares to skip your next main phase 1, special a monster from your graveyard in defense. So you can do stuff like Dugares to special summon the Penguin, and then your Penguin can summon something from hand, so you turn your 2 level 4s into the Dugares plus a Penguin in another body. I'd say that one comes with the least, but keep in mind. But the one that comes with the most is the double attack one. Just skip the battle phase of your next turn and double the attack of one monster you control until the end of the turn. Cruel Whale here can boost itself to 3,900 attack. If you Dugares double it, it goes to 78. That can beat over basically anything in the game. Your Arrival Cyber-Sat Ignister sucks. Dragoon boosted by 4,000, terrible. Just unbelievable. It's very funny too if your opponent has made a Verte and they've paid 2k. You don't even have to out a Dragoon or a DPE. You just have to go, cool, Dugares double whale to 78, attack over the Verte, that's the end of the game. You can also double Kraken to 44, and then just attack directly twice, 44, 44, that's 88, and you're done. Dugares also is your out to Mega Clops. What you do is you make two rank 4s. You make the Bahamut Shark and the Dugares, and then you double the Dugares, and then the Bahamut Shark can attack over it. There are also some funny tricks you do because whale isn't once per turn. You can go whale, boost another whale, and then that whale boosts itself, and then it'll go to 5,100, and then you can go Dugares, double that to 10,200, and then you have that whale attack into like just anything below 2,200 attack, and that's the end of the game. So Dugares makes lethal out of nothing. So if you feel like you are needing that in the format, like just being able to, okay, board is clear, I've got a rank 4 in a fusion, that's the end of the game. Dugares is really, really good for that. A flex spot, but consider it. It's a bit pricey right now, so if you don't have it, play something else and wait for a reprint, but if you've got it, you gotta give it a run, it's so sick. Next up is the Link lineup. The most important Link monster in the deck is Cross Sheep. Cross Sheep is extremely broken. It is basically the Fluffal Link monster. 2 monsters with different names. If a monster is special summoned to a zone this card points to, you can apply the following effects in sequence based on the card types of the monsters this card points to. The other effects don't matter. The only one that matters is the fusion. Special summon one level 4 or lower monster from your graveyard. This card is unbelievable. It is a great extender. You can activate it when you fusion summon something like a Cruel Whale to the zone it points to, and this is one of your main ways you can revive Penguin, and then Penguin can spam more Fluffals from hand. The other thing to keep in mind with Cross Sheep is that it doesn't have to trigger when you fusion summon to a zone. There just has to be a fusion monster pointing to it when you special summon a monster. So say you have a Cross Sheep in a Link zone and you've got a whale pointing to it. If you activate Sabre's effect to stack a card and summon it to the other Cross Sheep zone, you can activate the Cross Sheep because it's pointing to that Cruel Whale, and then you can summon the Penguin. So do keep in mind that you can both summon the Cross Sheep and fusion summon into it, but you can also build the Cross Sheep around your fusion monster. So I'll show some tips on how to like effectively do that as we get into the test hands and some of the competitive tips, but keep in mind that you can build around that Cross Sheep. The other thing too that's really sick, I'll get into that a bit later, but being 2 monsters with different names is really relevant. So next up we've got Artifact Dagda. This is another part of the win condition. 2 monsters with different names again, super generic. When the effect of another card on the field is activated quick effect, you can set an artifact monster from your hand or deck to your spell and trap zone as a spell, but destroy it during your opponent's next end phase. Obviously, we are doing Artifact Scythe. Scythe to lock out the extra deck is super strong. Imp Scythe to pop it again. Super easy to make this mid combo, and this is also very good for your more minimal setups, where you don't have all the gas to keep going, but you have enough for 2 bodies and an Imp Scythe in hand. You can do that. It's still a Scythe lock and a pop one. And you can just often Dagda pass, and it makes your opponent make very, very silly plays to try to get around it. This card also, like if you just end on this and nothing else, this dodges stuff like Chalice and Imperm, because you could just chain it to Chalice or Imperm, and then they have to have the second card to out it. So Dagda is actually like a really sick utility thing. The other thing too is this deck can sometimes discard Scythe off of Toy Vendor. I briefly mentioned this in a previous part of the video, but if you discard for Toy Vendor and you see the Scythe, it's not the end of the world, you just end on Dagda. Since Cruel Whale can pop any card, you can Cruel Whale to pop the Dagda and activate Dagda's second effect, which is that during your opponent's turn, if this Link summon card is destroyed, you can special an artifact monster from your graveyard in defense. So that artifact in your graveyard, you just pop the Dagda, and then the Dagda will activate to summon the Scythe. So you have in-engine ways to deal with having to get rid of that Scythe for different reasons. So I really like that Whale offers us that utility to really, really use Dagda to great effect. The important thing about Cross Sheep and Dagda, and I mean the Knightmare Phoenix is also just a spare slot, they are both extremely generic. So they can be made with 2 monsters with different names. That means if you can't set up your Toad and you get hit with a Nibiru, you can make your Cross Sheep or your Dagda post Nibiru. This is a really excellent way to push through that interaction. And there, because of stuff like the Repair, you can often set up the Scythe lock post Nibiru, which is something that not a lot of decks are capable of doing right now. So I really like that Dagda being super generic and Cross Sheep being generic offers us that utility. And obviously Phoenix, flex spot, but its Imperial Order sucks. Back row is rough. Phoenix is easy to make because you can just go Dog, add Sheep, and then Sheep special, and then that's your link 2 right there. So if you've got to out something problematic, it's just very easy to get to. Next up is the Apollousa. This is a main part of your end board and a backup strategy as well. This is basically the best payoff for all the monster spam this deck has. It is super duper good. It's very great bait for something like an Imperm or a Chalice, and then you can just like hold that Imp Scythe in hand, which is very strong. And importantly, you can usually protect it with the Imp Scythe too. So like if you have to make it like a 2 material Apollousa, you can protect it from getting hit with a normal summon by popping the normal summon with the Imp Scythe, and then your opponent still has to contend with the monster negates if they want to play. So I really quite like that. And it's also something that can force out interaction from your opponent. Just an overall very strong card. Frequently you can make it with 3/4 materials. Finally, we have the access code. Thank goodness it is getting a reprint here for people who didn't have access to it. It's likely to still be pricey, and importantly, you don't need this to succeed. There are a whole bunch of very strong extra deck cards you can play. This deck doesn't really have trouble making lethal. Accesscode Talker is just a nice way to clear boards, but you can play a ton of other cards and do well. You can play stuff like Proxy F Magician, you can play the third Cruel Whale, lots of different fusion stuff, lots of very, very good cards. The cool thing about access code with this specific deck list, though, is that all of your other 4 link monsters are different attributes. So you've got the Wind Apo, the Light Dagda, the Earth Cross Sheep, and the Fire Phoenix. So very often you can get really good value off of the access code. If you want, you can cut the Dugares for a unicorn just to like get that 5300, but it usually doesn't come up that you need it because a 4300 access code and a 3900 whale is enough damage. So it's pretty rare that 5300 is the difference between making lethal. In my entire time playing this deck, it has only come up once, so to my mind, it doesn't justify the unicorn slot. But if you don't like something like Phoenix or the Tornado or the Dweller or the Dugares or something, you can add the unicorn if you want that added removal and utility. So that is it for the extra deck. Again, there are other really cool cards you can play. I will get into them in another video so that you can experiment with your lists. The side deck doesn't matter that much. I will say the key things to keep in mind are Twin Twisters is maybe the best form of back row removal this deck has access to, just because it gets us value off of discarding cards like Vendor and Chain. And again, being chainable is super relevant to hit stuff like Shaddoll Schism or Chained Floodgates like an Imperial Order. Forbidden Droplet in the same token is a very good going second card, again, because we can get value off of it by discarding stuff like Chain and Vendor, and I mean like sending stuff like Lord and Sabres is also perfectly fine, and we've got extra sends with stuff like Garden. Again, not mandatory to succeed. You can play stuff like Evenly Matched or Forbidden Chalice or more hand traps or back row removal. It is a very strong card, but it's like a tech choice. You don't really need it, and it's also getting a reprint, so hopefully it's not, it'll still be expensive, but it hopefully won't be as price locked from people. The last thing to keep in mind is I am citing the 1 copy of Lancia. I'm not totally sold on this yet, but the thing to keep in mind with this is against the Flunderese matchup, Artifact Scythe does literally nothing, and your end board is like, it goes through Dagda a lot. So for matchups like weird rogue stuff, like if there's like a lot of Infernoid at your locals or there's a lot of Flunder, the Lancia does matter more because they can't do the recovery stuff. So being able to just like swap out the Lancia for the Scythe is nice, and just having the 1 copy is fine because like you can side it in against Tri-Brigade and maybe draw it. So in matchups where Artifact Scythe is not as powerful, specifically the Flunder one for this format, you can choose to side the 1 Lancia as an alternate Dagda target, and I really quite like doing that. So that is it for the deck profile. I hope that the card explanation has given you some tips and tricks, and I've given you points where you can maybe adjust ratios and experiment for yourself. Again, I have been doing really, really well on this format on this, so I think you should consider it. So now that we've got the very long preamble here out of the way, I'm going to do a couple test hands and show you kind of how this deck combos and functions. I'll show some example matches and some specific scenarios that you can do as playthroughs for specific hand traps or scenarios, and how to play out different hands, and like some more interesting tips and tricks with like how these individual cards function. And then I will show you a very funny remote duel replay I had with Aki of the Jank Tank on stream that showcases the power of Golden Lord going second and shows that this deck is very good at competing with high level meta. So I will catch you in a bit. All right, so I am here in the Dueling Book solo mode, and I'm going to do a couple of test hands here with you guys just to help explain some of the ways that you can have this deck function well. This hand in particular is very strong. There are some very cool things we could do with it. So without further ado, let's get started. So for the sake of these test hands, until we get into the more competitive tips, I am going to play these like super greedy, unless there's like a specific playthrough I can show you, just so that you guys can understand how the moving pieces go. In a match, you might play some of these hands out differently to fiend interactions, or especially going second. So this hand is really strong. So just to get the cards out of the deck, I'm going to lead with the Patchwork here. Because I don't think we will need the Frightfur Fusion or the Chain, I'm going to get Sabres here as a possible extender. And we already have the Edge Imp Scythe in hand, so we don't have to search that. So I am also going to keep the Bear in hand here. Well, I might keep the Vendor actually, because then I can go Vendor, discard Vendor. Yeah, so I'm going to use the Bear here. Declare. And we're going to set that Toy Vendor from deck. And this will show off the power of Golden Lord as an extender. So we're going to set that Toy Vendor. And here, if we want, there's actually a universe where we go like Vendor, discard the Toy Vendor to get the Penguin. We fuse away with the Penguin, discard the Golden Lord, and then send for the Vendor, especially because we have stuff like Sabres. But here, just to show off like the interaction, I'm going to go Toy Vendor effect, discarding the Golden Lord. And let's see what we hit off the top. Chain. That's actually pretty cool. So we're going to activate the Chain effect here. Because we've already activated Patchwork, I'm going to get the Frightfur Fusion out of deck. So now here, we're going to go Golden Lord effect, we're going to declare it. And I'm going to send this Toy Vendor, and we are going to special summon that Golden Lord. Well, I'll just do the Vendor search here. So here, I am going to get Fluffal Penguin, rather than the Dolphin, because I want to make sure that I'm able to Fusion summon if the Dolphin doesn't resolve. So we've got this here. And then I'm going to activate the Poly, and we are going to fuse with the Penguin and the Sabres. And I'll summon the Cruel Whale. Now, importantly, you'll notice that I'm summoning Cruel Whale in the middle zone. This is super important. You want to keep your middle zone clear. The reason for this is because going first or second, you want to make sure that you're always in a spot where your Cross Sheep can be pointing to a fusion monster. If it is in 1, 3, or 5, your opponent can cut off that zone with a link monster, and then you won't be able to use Cross Sheep. But if you summon your fusion to the middle, no matter what zone your opponent takes up, your Cross Sheep will always be pointing to that fusion monster. So keep in mind that you should. So here, we're going to activate the Penguin effect. And then your opponent has an opportunity to respond. If they don't use it, then you're going to chain the Cruel Whale effect targeting itself, and you're going to send the Repair. Let's find it. To grave. Sick. All right, let's see what we hit. Wings is very cool here, and Gardens is excellent. This is actually a very, very, very sick setup. So I am going to pitch the Vendor here, and we're going to go Vendor. We're going to add Dolphin. What is also very sick here is we have not used our normal summon, so keep that in mind. So here we're going to add the Penguin. Or no, not the Penguin, sorry. Top of deck, we're going to get Dolphin. And then we're going to activate the Royal Penguin's Garden. Garden is going to get ourselves that Penguin. Like, look at the card advantage we've got here already. It's just, it's very amazing. So here, since we've got the Repair and we have the Sabres as an extra Cross Sheep extender, I am going to normal the Penguin here. Or no, Penguin is special. So declare, we'll special the Dolphin here. And then we're going to go Dolphin effect, declare, and we're going to set this here Toy Vendor. So we'll pop it down there. We're going to set. Then I'm going to overlay these two into the Bahamut Shark here. Shark effect. Now, since we have a Penguin in grave, I'm going to detach the Dolphin here. Bahamut Shark detaches sometimes matter, and maybe it'll come up in a different hand, but basically you always want to make sure that you have a penguin in your graveyard to revive off of Cross Sheep if possible. So there's a Toad here. Notably, the Bahamut truck here would be summon 5, so that can Nibiru. But if they Nibiru here, we have the Frightfur Fusion and the Wings to extend, and the Imp Scythe as a backup move. And so that Nibiru doesn't actually do very much to us at all. Plus, we have the Repair to extend too. So even though this is summon 5, if we like fiend the Nibiru out of their hand, perfectly fine. So then I'm not going to link. I am actually going to do the link 2 here, because there was some funny stuff where if we hit something off of the vendor here, we trigger the Cross Sheep. So we've got the wing in hand, so rather than use the Sabres trick, because I haven't used the effect yet, I'm just going to discard the wings. And let's see what we get. That is really silly. That's really dumb. So we're going to special summon defense. We're going to go Cross Sheep and then Octopus here. Octo, I have to think about what we're adding back, because there's not like... I'm thinking maybe an extra... because we're special summoning Penguin, so maybe I get back like an extra Penguin just so that I can keep it in hand. I think that is kind of the move, yeah. So I'm gonna use Octo to add a Penguin back to hand, and then we're gonna special Penguin. So that's really silly. Here we didn't need to hit off the toy vendor, but the fact that we did is very cool. So here I think I will do the link 2 into the Dagda. And then we're gonna go declare Wings effect. If you can banish a bear, you should, just because it's like the least likely thing to come up that you'll want to revive or to add back, so we'll banish that. And again, bear is super accessible, so we'll draw, we'll send, and we'll draw. Patchwork is cool for follow-up next turn, and Gardens is also cool. Just an extra send for the Lord Engrave if we need to. Here, because we haven't activated Dog, we're going to get Dog, and that Dog is probably going to get a Sheep. So notice how, as I'm comboing, I'm looking to try and like access all of my individual pieces that do stuff. So then we're going to go Penguin effect here, and then we'll chain the Dagda. And we will set that spell trap here. We'll special summon the Doggo. And then we're going to go Dog effect here and add the one piece that we are missing, and that is the Sheep. So this is going to be a hand where we can just straight up add the Abyss Dweller to the end board, which is really ballin'. So here we're going to special the Sheep. And then, because we control Fluffal, we're going to go Sheep effect here, declare, and bounce the Dog. And special summon the Chain. And this is what I'm talking about when I say, like, you get that, you have access to that play, right? So then we're going to overlay these two for the Dweller. And notably, the Dweller has a water material under it. So now your Dweller is 22, and your Toad is 27. Then, because we haven't used Repair, but we actually have the Sabres engraved. So what I'm going to do, because... I don't care that much about this Royal Penguin's Garden, because I believe we have... Oh, actually, we don't have all those penguins in rotation, but we've already got one here. So I'm going to Sabres effect. We're going to stack this Penguin's Garden to the top of our deck. And I'm going to special summon that Sabres. And then we're going to link into that 3 material Apollousa. 1, 2, 3. So this was a very powerful end board. And while our hand was like obviously really strong, that was like Patchwork, Toy Vendor, Golden Lord. And it turned into this. So the reason that we're ending on a Cross Sheep is because we have the Octopus that we can use as some extra help in terms of recovery, but it's also a way to chain block the artifact scythe in the graveyard to avoid it getting hit with something like a Ghost Bell. So for example, you don't have to use the Cross Sheep here, but say you've like Dweller or whatever. So I would say here, just to try to like fiend out a droplet or something like that, fire the Dweller, detach the chain. That way you keep the water on here. If your opponent activates a spell card, you can just go Toad. Toad here can add back like a Dolphin. And then once your opponent commits some cards to the board, usually you want to wait for them to commit 2, just because that way you play around something like an Imperm. But depending on the situation, you will fire it earlier. So you go Imp Scythe here, you fuse with the Penguin, and you summon the Whale. Importantly here, Octopus does miss timing, so in order to make sure that it triggers, you have to activate Cross Sheep as Chain Link 1. I will usually go 1 Cross Sheep, 2 Penguin, 3 Whale. That chain blocks the Penguin from a potential Ash if like your Appos negated or it's not there, and then you can like do Shenanigan Read a dodge with Whale. So Whale will destroy one of your opponent's cards and pop the Scythe. Then Penguin will draw you cards and you'll discard 1. Oh, perfect. Get some extra value there, I guess. and then the Cross Sheep will trigger to summon the Octopus. Now here we can do some cool chain blocking tricks. So we're going to go Octopus effect. We're going to actually target the Sabres, I think, or we'll target the Sheep here to get more extension. So Octopus will target, well, Chainlink 1, Scythe is mandatory. So Artifact Scythe is Chainlink 1 here. Then we'll go Chainlink 2, Imp Chain, just search for another Patchwork, just because we can get the value. And then we'll go Chainlink 3, Octopus, add the Sheep. So we'll resolve that backwards. We're going to add this to hand. We're going to go Chain to add that other copy of Patchwork. And then we'll summon the Artifact Scythe. Check out this card advantage that we've got here. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 cards. We'll be top decking into a 14th. We've popped one of their cards. We've negated a card with Toad. We've locked them out of the extra deck. We've locked them out of graveyard effects. They still have a 3 material Apollousa to deal with. We have protection for the whale in the form of the attack boost and in the Imp Scythe in the graveyard. And we have follow-up in the form of Golden Lord, Repair, Sabres, and our entire hand. I don't know what to tell you guys. This deck is crazy, and I think more people really should be playing it. So that's the first test hand. I'm going to get into a second one, and I'll see you there. So this will be cool, because this can maybe showcase a way that you can mess with some wonkier hands. So I am going to play this out in a more specific way, I think. Because I want to be able to pitch chain here. And I want to be able to, like, I think the way to play through the most amount of interaction here is the normal summon Dog. Because that way, if Dog gets hit, we can goods into a bear, and then bear pitch the wings, and we can dig into stuff, or we can hit chain. There's another interesting line here where we would go Dog, add Sheep, and use the Sheep as bait to get the chain to link off to search, and if that flops, we go Foolish Burial Goods into bear to pitch wings. But I'll just play out the line and see what I feel like. So we'll go Dog. Here I'm thinking the way to do this is actually to add the Penguin. Because there are some funny tricks here that are workable. And then we're going to go goods to send the vendor. Vendor effect will add bear. And then we'll send the bear from hand to set a toy vendor. Oops. So we will send that to the graveyard, and then we set a toy vendor. Cool, so now I'll activate the vendor here. So there are a couple things you could consider doing. Since I don't have Gamma, I think I am going to pitch the chain just to, like, see. Because we can always discard the wings with Penguin later, so I'll pitch that. Let's see what we hit. Golden Lord, that's bonkers, because that will be extra extension. So so that Lord is going to go to grave because it's not a Fluffal. We're going to activate the chain effect. So we're going to view, and we are going to go and add a Patchwork to hand. Then we'll activate Patchwork, and because we don't have the Scythe, we're going to get the Scythe here. So we'll go hand, add Poly. Now here, I think the play is actually, I think because we can reset the vendor. So I actually think the play is to Golden Lord and make a Cross Sheep play. So we're going to go Golden Lord to send. So special summon this in defense, and we'll send the toy vendor. And add the Dolphin. This is maybe a bit greedy, but like I said, we're just going to do greedy lines today because I feel like it. Now we're going to go Cross Sheep. And importantly, because we will hopefully be able to get a Repair engrave here, Nibiru basically will not matter. So we're going to special this. And we're going to go Chainlink 1 Cross Sheep, Chainlink 2 Penguin. This is just in case the Penguin pitches something that we want to summon later. If Penguin gets removed from the graveyard for some reason, then Cross Sheep can revive what we discard with Penguin. And then if they have no response to that, we can do this. If you want to chain block Ash on Penguin, you can go 1 Penguin 2 Cross, but I kind of like doing it the other way. It also plays around a Gamma on Cross Sheep, and if your Penguin doesn't resolve, especially here, it is absolutely not the end of the world at all. So that's something to also keep in mind, to stray away from something like a Gamma on a Cross Sheep or an Orange Light or whatever. So we got that send. We're going to resolve the Penguin draws here. That kind of is cool. I think we actually pitched the wings here, just in case. Because it's kind of a free discard, but also eh. So we'll do that to grave, and then we'll special Penguin. So we're going to go Penguin here to declare and special the Dolphin. And then we'll go Dolphin effect to set our toy vendor. And here we can do the really cool stuff. And we're going to send the Sabres. So what's super rocking about this, right, is we have the Sabres stack to make sure that we like guaranteed hit something off of the toy vendor, and we can get an extra body on board, which is awesome. So here I'm going to overlay. Now, importantly, we have already used the dog effect, so I have to decide if the Sabres play is worth it, but I think it is because we want to use the repair on something like an octopus, and just having the extra link material body would be pretty cool. So I'll go Bahamut truck here. Declare. And again, being able to access the Sabres play here is really cool because it makes sure that if they Nibiru us here, we still have Scythe lock pop 1. And possibly an Appo, depending on how sick the line is. So here, we don't have a Penguin in grave yet, so just on the off chance we can bring it back with something, we're going to do that. Special summon a Farrago. Now we'll link into the Dagda, I think. Just to like have as much space on the board as possible. Then we'll activate Toy Vendor, and then I'll chain the Dagda. And I'm going to do this before I do the Saber stack, just so that like, I'm doing like the deck shuffle before I fire it. So we're going to set this to the spell trap zone. We'll set that. And here, I'm actually wondering if I don't do the trick here. Because again, I haven't used the Sabres effect yet, and I want to be able to keep a Fluffal in hand to use, just in case like my Totally Awesome gets hit with a call by the grave or something. So I think I'm actually not going to do the Sabres trick. We're not going to get as jiggy with it, I guess. Banish the bear, because we've got one. We'll draw. We'll pitch. We'll draw. Vendor. That's crazy. The stack trick might have been good there then. So we'll go vendor effect here, declare. Oh, and in fact, drawing the vendor actually means we can still do the Sabres trick. So here I'm going to get the octopus. Because I want to make sure that I have that edge imp in my hand. So now, in order to facilitate shenaniganry, I think in order to push this hand as far as it can go, we're going to do the stack trick. So I'm going to activate the toy vendor here. I'm going to Sabres, and we're going to stack the dog. Or no, I'm going to stack the bear actually. Top deck. And we will do that. And then I'm going to activate the toy vendor effect here, declare. We're going to pitch the driver, and we're going to draw the bear that we stacked. And we're going to special the octopus. We're going to activate that octopus to add that edge Imp Scythe back. Oh, and I actually forgot that the site, I forgot to summon the Sabres after using the effect. That's funny. So here, if we wanted, I could use the repair to summon a Fluffal and make a 4 material Apollousa here, but I think I'm actually going to keep the repair in grave as follow-up, because we don't usually need a much bigger one. So we're going to do this, and that way I keep multiple Fluffals in hand. So we do this. So that was like kind of an awkward, interesting hand, and we didn't hit like that much off of the toy vendor here, but we do still have a Golden Lord in grave, a repair as recovery. This is Toad, Apollousa, and then again on our opponent's turn, say we use the Toad, we can add back the Penguin. And then on opponent's turn, fuse to grave. And the nice thing here with like the edge Imp Scythe, they can't call by the grave the edge Imp Scythe. So your pop is going to go through. You can hold it until they like push through your board so that they either don't have plays after they droplets to negate your whale, or they have to fire the droplets early and then you drop the bomb on them in the form of the edge Imp Scythe. Chainlink 1 Sheep, Chainlink 2 Penguin, Chainlink 3 Whale. You pop one of their cards, put this to grave. You draw and discard. That's pretty cool. Here I think we'll pitch, we've got all 3 vendors in grave, right? We don't. Interesting. I think I'll keep the FP goods then. And then we'll special the Octo. And then again, that's Chainlink 1 Edge Imp Scythe, Chainlink 2 Octo. Octo here because we drew the sheep. I don't know, I'll just get Penguin, I guess. And then send an Artifact Scythe. So again, ending on the cross sheep gets you like super crazy card advantage, and because we have this vendor face up, that's a free body with a Lord and a free search. So we're like, again, you can just do so much here. So I'm thinking I'll do a couple more of these types of test hands, and then I'll get into like some more minimal setup scenarios and some hand trap playthroughs, for example. Okay, this is also a really interesting hand, so I'll play this one through, and we'll see how it jams. This is a particularly funky one because there are a couple of very interesting hand trap playthroughs. Here, I think just for the sake of argument, I am going to lead with the normal summon Penguin. And this is to like maybe fiend something like an Ash on the Dog when I summon it as extra bodies, and then I could just use the Penguin on field of fusion material. The punish here is if they Gamma this. Gamma on Penguin here is bad, but I am not seeing as much Gamma in the format, so that's why I'm leading with this. So we're going to declare special Doggo. And here we're going to go Dog declare, and we're actually going to add the Bear. And this is because that is a discard outlet for stuff like the Frightfur Fusion, which can then extend into further combo plays here. So we're going to go Bear effect here to Grave. I'm going to set that their toy vendor. And here I'm actually going to activate the Patchwork first, because if this resolves, then we don't have to send the chain. So let's say that this resolves for sake of argument. This is going to get us the Poly and the Edge Imp Scythe to hand. So now we're going to activate the vendor here. And we're going to go vendor pitch the Golden Lord. Draw. Royal Penguin's Garden. That's fine. Because we're already swimming in the card advantage, right? So now we're going to go Lord effect to send this to special. Declare to add. And here we are actually going to get our Dolphin. If I can find it here. There you are. Two-hand. This was maybe a slightly suboptimal line, but there's so many branching paths in this that sometimes you miss the good stuff. So I'll link into the Cross Sheep, fuse with this. And again, what's nice about this setup too, is that even if they Nibiru us here, we still have Edge Imp Scythe the Dolphin as a playthrough option, and we're probably going to draw into more stuff with the Penguin. So this deck, most of the time, can still set up quite a formidable board through a Nibiru. 1 Cross Sheep, 2 Penguin, 3 Chain, 4 Whale. God, I love when that happens. So we send the Repair. We're going to add the Frightfur Fusion here. Let's draw some cards. Toy Vendor, that's bonkers. And Sabres, that's also crazy. I think because we have used Dog effect here, I might send the... I think I might send the Toy Vendor. No, I'm actually going to pitch the Sabres because I can go Vendor pitch Vendor later, which is really funny. So I'm going to pitch that, and then we'll special summon this. Penguin effect, special the Dolphin. Dolphin effect, we're going to set that there, Toy Vendor. And we will send Fluffal Wings. For those of you who have stuck around this long, are you understanding why this deck is ridiculous yet? So we'll go Bahamut Shark. And again, we'll go Bahamut Shark. We do not have a Penguin engraved, so I'm going to send that. And then we're going to go special summon attack for the Froggy. We're going to activate this. We'll go Vendor, pitch the Vendor. Chain. We have already used Chain, I believe, so that's like, okay. But then we're going to go Vendor effect here. View. Here, I am going to get, I think, Sheep, because there are some interesting lines that are basically, we'll get this extra link material here. And because we have a chance to draw into stuff like Royal Penguin's Garden, or add the Penguin later, I'm going to get like a different piece, basically. Octopus is also something you could consider here, but I'm going to get Sheep because I'm feeling lucky. So then again here, we're going to go Wings effect. And we haven't even used the Sabres either, which is very silly. So we're going to banish this. We're going to hit the Bear, again, because we have one. Draw, send Vendor, draw. Drawing the Artifact Scythe here. Okay, so that is totally fine, because again, we can just set it. So here, I do think I am going to get... I'm actually going to get Octopus here, because we can add back the Penguin that's in the graveyard. And then we're going to make a lot of hand advantage here. So this hand, unfortunately, is unlikely to make the Dweller, but here we're going to go Repair, banish. We're going to special the Octopus. We're going to go Octo effect. Add back the Penguin. Then what's cool about this is we get to go Sheep effect. There was a universe where we like... It's not, yeah, I like getting the Octopus here just because we get extra value out of it. So we're going to go Declare. It's a hand. Special the Chain, I guess. And then we're just going to load it right up. Bada bing, bada boom. 4 material Apollousa. 2, 3, 4. And then we set that Artifact Scythe. So there's a couple of very funky tricks here. So when your opponent commits the card to the board and you're comfortable, you can fuse with the Octopus if you want to put the Wings back in grave. But because we don't have a toy vendor and we've gone through 2 of them, I am going to fuse with the Penguin. The Penguin can discard the Octopus, which can then be revived by Cross Sheep. So again, you do the same thing here. Chainlink 1, Cross Sheep, Chainlink 2 Penguin, Chainlink 3 Whale. Whale pops this on a card your opponent controls to grave. Draw. Draw. And we've got the Bear. That's cool for later. The Patchwork actually doesn't do that much because we can't resolve it unless we add back like a Dolphin and use it as fusion material, and we don't really need it, so I'm going to pitch the Patch here. Or actually, no, I'm not. I forgot. We're pitching the Octopus. So we're going to send the Octo to grave, and then we're going to revive the Octo with the Cross Sheep, because Cross Sheep does not target. So then here, if we wanted to, we could do that, but in order to like do some funky tricks to resolve this Patchwork again, I'm actually going to go, so Chainlink 1, Artifact Scythe, obviously. Chainlink 2, we're going to Octo, add back the Dolphin here. And then we're going to special summon the Scythe. And then if we Toad, we can grab the Penguin, right? So again, like, look at this hand advantage. You have follow-up, you have a super diverse board of interaction, you have something that you can hold for your opponent's board breakers in the form of Imp Scythe. The boards this deck puts up are really just extremely strong and oppressive and resilient. And the main deck can go second really, really well. So I think that'll be it for the test hands, at least as they are like randomly coming up to me. But now I'm going to show you some very specific tips and tricks that you can do with this deck that will help elevate your game and give you more routes to explore with combos and playthroughs with hand traps. So I'm going to start with the Droll playthrough 3-card combo. So I will see you guys when I'm there. And we're back. So this is going to be a 3-card Droll playthrough combo. So the idea behind this is if you have a Penguin or Dolphin, any way to get Vendor into the graveyard and edge Imp Scythe, you can still set up a pretty sick board through Droll. So let's fire it off. So we're gonna fire off this FB Goods. Send Toy Vendor, and Toy Vendor is going to activate to add Dolphin to our hand. And at this point, our opponent has activated Droll. Oh no, what are you gonna do? Don't worry, I got you. Normal summon Penguin. Penguin effect special Dolphin. You've been here before. Because we can't draw off the wings, we're going to use Dolphin's hidden utility here. So we're going to set the Toy Vendor, but we're actually going to set Edge Imp Sabres. To grave. So now you're going to overlay for Bahamut Shark. Bahamut Shark effect here. It doesn't really matter that much what you detach. Detach whatever you want to add back. And because like there's a universe where we pop our Toy Vendor, I'm probably going to detach the Dolphin here, but it doesn't particularly matter because we're linking it off anyway. Special summon the Toad. Then you're going to take one of the 4th or 5th cards in your hand, stack it on top of the deck to summon Sabres. Then you're going to link 2 into the artifact Dagda. Then if you want to trigger the Dagda, you can activate the Toy Vendor and then chain the Dagda here to then set the artifact Scythe. And if you drew like a crappy card, that'll shuffle that crappy card back into the deck that you stack back with the Sabres, which is also a very cool utility thing with like a lot of the stuff shuffling and searching that you can do. So we're going to set that Scythe. And then if you have another Fluffal in hand, great. If not, you can activate the Toad to get back the card to your hand. And then, so that's a 3-card combo where through Droll, you still end on an Omni Negate in Toad and a pop 1, a Scythe Lock, and a Droll 2. And a Droll 2, and a Draw 2 move. So that is one of your Droll playthroughs. There are a couple of other like combos where you can do like Toad Apollousa through Droll. There are a couple of other funny ones depending on your hand. If you open some very cool stuff where you could do like Dweller, Dweller Edge Imp Scythe, for example, for specific matchups. And like if you hard draw Artifact Scythe, or there are some lines where you can just do like Tornado Dragon Artifact Scythe under Droll. This deck is quite good at monster spamming, so keep that in mind when you're performing under something more restrictive like a Droll or a Lancia. You just have to adjust a little bit, but Droll is very strong, but it is absolutely not a death sentence. And I mean, we also have, we've also got Gamma, and if you can like resolve a Gamma against a Droll, best feeling ever. Free Cross Sheep, you just go off ad infinitum. Very cool. So that is the main 3-card Droll playthrough combo. So now I'm going to showcase some tricks you can do with stuff like Royal Penguin's Garden. And it's the new tool that we got in BODE that allows us to we get to jimmy around plays a little bit. So let's go take a look at that. All right, and we are here. So this is the first little tip and trick for Royal Penguin's Garden hand trap playthroughs. There's some very sick interactions you can do involving how this card functions. So first, we'll fire the Foolish Burial Goods. And we're going to send ourselves this toy vendor, and we're going to get a dolphin. Standard stuff, we're just going for the normal, usual penguin dolphin play. You know how it be. So that's the thing. You normal summon this here penguin. You're going to activate the effective penguin, declare, and whoops, opponent goes Imper. Not a problem. Here's how we fix it. So you're going to activate Royal Penguin's Garden to snag another penguin. To hand. Then you're going to activate the second effect of Royal Penguin's Garden, revealing this here penguin. And then you're going to discard the chain. So now this penguin is level 3, but then you activate the chain effect because it was sent from the hand to the graveyard. That gets you Patchwork, and Patchwork gets you Poly and an Edge Imp. And then you can fusion summon using the penguin that's in your hand here, the level 3, and then when it hits the grave, it's going to be level 4. So you special summon. Now Penguin can activate the effect of draw, and then you're again using Whale to Send, and that Whale to Send is now what's going to get you that Dolphin out of your hand, right? So let's draw, let's see what we hit. Oh, Sabre's Dog. Music to my ears. We're going to pitch the Sabres here because we can do some playthrough stuff, which is fun. But again, now you are like still playing because you can go Repair to summon Dolphin, Dolphin to set, you get your Wing Straws, you can go Bahamut Toad, and you have a Sabres that you can use to summon and extend. You can build a Cross Sheep around a Cruel Whale here. Lots of different extension you can do. So that is one of the ways that Royal Penguin's Garden can do play extension. I'm going to do a quick cut here, and I'm going to show you guys the other one. All right, and we're back. So this is another like little mini set play thing. It's kind of like the Bear Golden Lord situation. This functions as like Bear Golden Lord, basically. So you're going to go Royal Penguin's Garden here, and this is assuming you have literally nothing else. Like this is like your only play. Usually you'll have like other stuff that you can use to push through. But in case you have literally nothing else and you don't have another way to get vendor in the graveyard, you can use the effect to reveal the penguin to pitch the vendor. And then you can use the vendor effect to grab yourself that dolphin if that's what the hand requires. So now, notably, this penguin is level 3. So when you go penguin dolphin here and you activate the dolphin, you are still going to go and set and send that wings, but you actually have to link 2. So you're going to send those to grave. If you're feeling greedy, you can make the Cross Sheep. Maybe if you have like a Poly, but you don't have something like an Edge Imp, you can be brave and do the Cross Sheep. But if you want to like maybe play it safe, you could do something like a Dagda, maybe try to extend. And you might as well like try to hit off of this vendor if your like hand is super dead. So declare, detach, see if you get something. But you can go banish. And now, if you had literally nothing else, that Gardens and Toy Vendor did at least get you to your Wing Straws. And would you look at that, that is actually pretty solid because we can use the Foolish Burial Goods to send a Repair, and then we can do some Link Climb plays here. So that is actually pretty rocking. We'd probably, like in this situation, you would go Vendor to get like a dog. And then you could, like, FP Goods, grab a... I think I'd send Repair, Special Dog, Dog add Sheep, and then you could probably end on like if you had like any other random level 4 in your hand, you could, or like a dead Golden Lord or something, you could probably do like at least an Apollousa like with 4 materials here, even as like a really bad play, or you could probably do Apo rank 4 if you end up drawing something like a chain here. Like basically the idea is that Royal Penguin's Garden boosts consistency because it takes a lot of like mediocre hands and it makes them relatively playable, and it takes a lot of good hands and makes them insane. So that is one other specific bit of tech that you can work with. And then I'm just going to like do another quick demonstration of how you would like build around a Cross Sheep, for example. Oh, this is perfect actually. Okay, so you don't always have to like lead with the Penguin Dolphin. You can build around. This hand actually might be like more optimal to Penguin Dolphin first, just because we have the extension, but let's, just for the sake of example, let's say we didn't. So I'll activate the Gardens here. I got a Pingu to the hand. Fusion summon. Bada bing, bada boom. We'll slide those in. All right, and then we've got the whale here. We'd go 1 penguin, 2 chain, and then 3 whale. So we'll send the repair, the Frightfur Fusion, and we'll draw. Poly Gamma, we'll pitch Gamma here, because Gamma's not doing anything for us. So, here, we've got the Cruel Whale. We can still build fusion stuff around this. So, we're gonna go goods. Here, and again, for this hand, it would have been optimal to go Penguin Dolphin, but I'm doing this specifically to demonstrate like an example of how you might build around a Cruel Whale into a cross sheet. So we'll normal the Dolphin here, we're going to set the toy vendor. And here, because we have the wings in hand, I'm actually not going to send Sabres. I'm going to send a Fluffal other than Penguin to banish. So I think I'm going to send something like a Bear here. Just so that we can keep that Penguin in graveyard. And again, we also have the Frightfur Fusion to use as a combo piece, and that is also really sick. So we'll see if we had anything here. Royal Penguin's Garden, that's totally fine. We're going to do our draws. Banish, banish. And again, we have not yet used Repair, which is very cool. Penguin, oh, we drew Sabres. That's actually really cool. We can do some fun stuff with that. So I'm going to get a dog here to hand. And I can show you some... this is actually really, really cool. I can show you some very funny tricks with this. So we're going to Repair here, banish, special dog. And we're going to go dog here, view to get sheep. So this is a really funny way that you can get build a cross sheep around. Often dog sheep is a way to do it. So we're going to special this. We do have a chain engrave, but I actually kind of want to get the Sabres engrave because that's how we make this work. So here you can do stuff like bounce the Dolphin to hand and special the Sabres. And then you're going to link 2 into the cross sheep. And then use Sabres effect to stack. And here, because it's pointing to and there's a monster summoning, then you can activate the cross sheep to summon the Penguin. And then you link 2 into the Dagda. Declare Penguin effect, chain the Dagda. I'll go through the motions just so that people can keep getting the practice in. Set, special the Dolphin. Overlay, and again, you're playing into Nib for some of these hands, but you still have Edge Imp Scythe Penguin as a disruption here, which is pretty cool. So we're gonna overlay, detach, special summon Toad here, and then you've got the Apollousa. 1, 2, 3. And so that's an example. Obviously, that hand you would play it differently, but that's an example of say you didn't have anything else in your hand and you just had a chain, poly, and a penguin. That's how you would lead with the Cruel Whale and then build a cross sheep around it. Often you have to play into Imp to do that, but not always. Sometimes you can do stuff similar to Golden Lord, where depending on what your draws are with the penguin, you can make that Toad summon 5, use an extender, then make the cross sheep, and then repair into something else. There are setups that do that, but keep in mind that you can build around the whale. You don't have to whale into the cross sheet. So with that, I think that will be all for the test hand portion. If you need help with this, sit in Dueling Book or Edo Pro solo mode, combo for a while. You'll figure out little individual tips and tricks and interactions. I'll probably do another video with more interesting tidbits later. But for now, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through some example matches. And that will give you a sense of how some of this plays into different matchups or the metagame, how I sequence plays into doing things, and then I'll show you a fun replay I did with Aki for the MBT subathon. So I'll catch you in the example matches. All right, I'm here with the 2 match replays here for you, and then I'll have a 3rd match replay that'll happen on a separate platform. I'll be getting a stream VOD for that one. It's remote duel, so that's fun. So this is a match against Dragon Link. I took this one down 2-1. Game 1, I'm going to highlight a very big mistake from me. If I had sequenced this one better, I think there was a universe where I pull it out. But do keep in mind that I was very, very lazy at the beginning of this replay. So we're going to get started. So I lose the die roll, but this is fine. The main deck is usually quite good at going second. So your mana is pretty good. Here I am super lazy. I am thinking, all right, Chamber normal summon. I really don't want to deal with the tidying. I'm just going to gamble on them not having an interaction here. Big mistake. There was no reason to do this. There was a universe where it paid off for me because, again, it keeps them off of making Striker Dragon with a normal summon. But any amount of like Quick Launch or the Chaos Space here just does what they want anyway. So it would have been better to hold it, and I'll show you the spot where I probably would have activated the Gamma. So we'll get rolling here. So I Gamma that, and then they drop the Chaos Space, and I'm like, yeah, okay. Now, notably, my hand still is workable. Dragon Link, there are top decks that get me out of this for sure. So I keep in, and then I want to see like what they're on. And keeping in a match to get information is sometimes quite valuable because you'll see that I get to find out that they're playing a specific package here. So they do this, they add that Black Dragon, and then they activate the Quick Launch here. I should have held the Gamma for the activation of this Rocket Tracer effect. This, most of the time, unless they have a second Quick Launch and another extender, will keep them off of a level 8 synchro. That means they're having to like use extra bodies, and in the case of this hand, they would have had to gone like, if I had negated the Tracer, they could have gone like Dragon Reveed Send to add. They would have had to like use their entire hand to make that level 8 synchro, and it would have been awkward. But because I use it on the Chamber, I have to deal with a much more disgusting board and follow-up than I would have if I had allowed the Chamber to resolve and let them keep it tidying. And this deck doesn't care that much about tidying because Cruel Whale doesn't target, so you can just pop other stuff you control. So the correct play here, maybe not the correct play, there's like a couple of other spots maybe, but I would have probably Gamma to the Tracer. And I have kind of liked using Gamma on Tracer lately. Clearing the body and preventing them from getting the summon off of Tracer does a lot, and it cuts off a lot of extension. So here they Ravine, they summon the Recharger, and they make Chaos Ruler. And like they do all those mills, obviously. They got quite lucky. They didn't send any of their DPE bricks here. So they Levy Rip a card. I'm like, yeah, whatever, it's fine. They hit Dolphin, which is probably like the least good card in my hand. So that works for me. And they make a Verite here. I'm a bit confused about that until they send the Fusion Destiny. So this is why it can be important to stay in a match sometimes. You get to see stuff that your opponent's playing and you can game plan around it. So now I know that they're on the DPE package in some capacity and that they're playing Chaos Ruler. So this board isn't like that intimidating, but their follow-up in hand is bonkers. So I have to try to kill them this turn. Fast forward. So obviously I Patchwork here, which is really strong. I set the Vendor because I'm going to try to pop it with the Whale. But they have the Effect Veiler, which kind of sucks. So I got the Frightfur Fusion. I pitched the Repair just to like see if I can hit a Fluffal. I don't, and then I make the Whale. But my opponent does the very heads-up play, so the DPE cleared their stuff to bounce so that I have to try to pop my own Whale. And then they use the Hieratic Seal to bounce my Toy Vendor. And at that point, I know it's the end of the game, because if I had been able to hit the Toy Vendor, I could grab Dog. I could do some plays involving Repair. I can do Gara's Dig for more stuff. Like if they don't hit that, or I can because I have an activated Bear, I can do Bear Wings and try to draw my way out of it. But they bounced the Toy Vendor, which was very heads up for my opponent, and there was no way I was playing through this follow up. So on to game 2. Here I'm going to go first, and this is going to showcase how you can like maneuver and play through hand traps, specifically with Gardens. So I lead with the Patchwork here. They don't have the Ash, which is super baller. I get the Scythe, again, because I don't have another one. So we're going to get the Penguin here. We're going to FB good, send the Toy Vendor, add and add the Dolphin, and we're going to normal the Penguin. Here, they allow that to resolve. They allow Dolphin to resolve, I think because they're waiting. So they Veiler my Bahamut Shark. And I actually think this was the right move. Obviously, Dolphin sending is a good, but I can just poly to Penguin and draw cards and continue to combo. So holding the Veiler for the Bahamut was actually not a bad idea here. But I now get to do my Wings draws for free. So Wings, and again, drawing Dog Chain. Chain is really cool because I can keep Edge Imp Scythe in hand. And obviously I get a Vendor trigger here. I think I get Sheep or Sabres, but I'm not sure. I get the Sheep here, yeah, sweet. So again, then you hard poly. Again, now because I drew another piece, I'm keeping the Edge Imp Scythe in hand. That way, in case they like want to like DD Crow out, if they suss up to what my game plan is, I can keep it in hand as a disruption, especially if I get hand trapped to death. My opponent actually chooses to hold the Imperm for their turn here. And I'm thinking they're maybe like, again, doing kind of like what I like to do, and they're going to wait and see like what the board is like, and they'll use it as a going second tool. So again, I get those pitches. I get a bear because I have everything else. Repair to special dog. We're going to dog here to get the sabers. Yeah, so I grabbed the sabers specifically because I can bear for a vendor, and then I can use sabers as an extender again to like build to that cruel whale. Yeah, so we hit that, go sabers, no call by the grave, that's fine. And then this is again like that example building around. I use the sabers to stack and then summon to the cross sheep zone, and then cross sheep will summon a penguin. Penguin, we link into the Dagda here. And this is where I think my opponent is committed to not using that imperm, because they're probably going to hold it for the artifact scythe, but I make sure they can't do that. So penguin effect chain Dagda. We set the scythe, we summon Octo. Octopus here is adding back a penguin, specifically because I can end on a dweller here because I have a chain. And you'll see that I can do Apollousa dweller scythe lock with this hand through the Veiler on the Bahamut shark. So you bounce the octopus to hand and you summon that. You link those into Apo, and then you overlay for dweller. Here, I fire the dweller in the draw phase. Specifically, this fiends out stuff like Droplet, and then if they like use their board breaker, then you have Imp Scythe, Fluffal Penguin to pop a card and lock them out of the extra after. It can also bait, again, stuff like this Impermanence, which you'll see that they fire here. But they actually target the Apollousa to turn off that. I'm thinking because they want to spam stuff from hand, but I'm totally fine with dweller resolving. Cuts off Safer Graveyard Effect, cuts off the Collapse Serpent searches, cuts off a lot of other grave effects like Absol Router or Black Metal if they're playing that, or Knocked Out a Draw. So Dweller actually does quite a lot of work against D-Link. So they Safer, I'm like, sure. Summon Tracer, fine. They banish, they summon, they go Striker to add, that's also fine. And then when they activate Boot Sector Launch, this is when I decide to fire the Imp Scythe. This is to play around a second Impermanence, because as soon as they've committed a second card to the field, they can't clear it. And that way they can't activate the Impermanence because they control a card. So before they activate that effect to special, I Imp Scythe here, and we go to game 2. Or game 3, rather. So I take a look at this hand. This is a mistake. Don't do this. I forgot to side out the Artifact Scythe going second. I occasionally keep it in, but this is a matchup where you need all your gas. I don't know why I didn't, but I still won this one. So you'll see the power of Imp Scythe here. Obviously, if I use the Imp Scythe, I pretty much have to draw into a Fluffal name. But I think it's mostly still workable if you have to use it as a disrupt. And you'll see that my opponent sequences a bit poorly, and I can take advantage of it. So fast forward, they quick launch into the Rocket Synchron, and they were looking to do the Chaos Ruler play here and to get the extra add. So they send a bunch of stuff, they get the chamber, they normal the chamber and activate the effect. And so here I have a choice, because they use the quick launch specifically through the Synchron Absol Router Dragon play, and they have not yet made a Striker Dragon. So I don't think they have Boot Sector, and I don't think they have another quick launch. And I feel like they would have done a different line, because I think this was digging for extenders mostly. So I was like, okay, if they've committed their summon to chamber, if I pop the chamber, they can't make Striker and summon the Tracer from hand, so they have to have the extender. So I fire it and I get paid off. It pays off. So I go whale here. I decide to banish to protect just to keep it on board, because I know they have this to bounce it. If I threaten something like the Chaos Ruler, and again, this pays off for me. So it's Chaos Ruler, Tidying Pass, and I draw a Penguin for turn. Sometimes you just get the sauce. So we Patchwork here. Poly again for Sabres. Here, I could have gotten Chain to dig for a something like a Frightfur Fusion, but because I have the second Poly, I'm thinking Penguin can draw me into more stuff, and that's like if I make a Tiger here, and I draw into literally anything, it's a guaranteed way to kill here. So that was kind of my logic, was I have like a reasonably guaranteed way to make lethal if I do Tiger here and I draw anything off of the Penguin. So I make the Tiger here, and my opponent scoops. They draw, and they're like, yeah, I should have done like a Nocto play. I could have summoned that and gone further. Yeah, so this is how you might like sequence plays, like I mentioned, going second, especially like with Penguin off the top. And this is an example of how you have to think about what your opponent might have when you're using something like an Edge Imp Scythe to clear the thing from the board that will cause them the most trouble when trying to set up a board. And it's also a decision you have to make between, do I banish the Scythe and keep the body on board? Specifically, I did that because of the tidying. Or do you clear your whale to keep this as protection? Because they don't have anything that can really destroy cards. I'm cool leaving the whale up. So yeah, that's the first example match. Now I'm going to move into an example match against a more back row heavy strategy to explain to you how you can maneuver your way around some of those setups. The first replay of the next one is not that great, but like it's okay. All right, so this is replay against, it is a Sky Prison Eldlich build playing a mini Lightsworn engine, and just to be clear about this, game one, my opponent bricks horribly. Double Golden Lord, double Conch, Golden Land Forever. They could have sent like set a Conch, gone like Golden Lord, send Conch to send Conch, and keep like at least the Golden Land Forever live. And there's like a universe where they can go like Conch, banish to set a Sanguine, go Golden Lord, send that Sanguine, summon the Lord, Sanguine, banish to set a Conch. But I'm thinking they're like, we'll just see what they're playing and I'll set cards. And maybe they didn't want to like lose super hard and do that. So this is like they could have set up Golden Land Conch, basically. But I think they chose not to for like bluff reasons. So here we're sending vendor. We're going to get there. I don't have fusion access, so I'm going to be like basically digging for it with with stuff here. I hit dog, which is nice, and my opponent scoops. They're like, all right, I don't have any interaction. They're going to kill me. They're playing Fluffal. Cool. So game two here. My opponent opens a slightly better hand. I think they also maybe played this a bit suboptimally, but we'll see. So they fast forward. They go this. Their mills are like, okay, Milling King, the Sky Prison sucks, but they got an Eld card. And I think they're doing sending here specifically so that they can send a bunch of monsters. So again, their end phase raid and mills are kind of sus. So they end on what is basically two bodies in the form of the Golden Lord and the Conch and the Judgment as disruptions. A couple of key interactions is why I wanted to show off this replay here. So they flip the Sanguine and standby, sure. Here we're going to activate the Patchwork, and importantly, they negate it with Solemn Judgment. So keep in mind, Solemn Judgment negates the activation of cards. And even though Frightfur Patchwork is hard once per turn, since they negated the activation, you can activate another copy of it because it was treated as if you did not activate the card. So I take advantage of this by going Bear, pitch to set the Toy Vendor, and they don't hit my Toy Vendor here, so I'm like, yeah, cool. Toy Vendor effect, pitch that, and they don't have a Aquaro here. I was worried that they might, but they ended up not, so it worked out for me. So hitting the Edge Imp Scythe here is cool because, again, this is protection for like our fusion monsters from something like a Conquistador, so I really like that we hit that. And then we're going to use that chain to add a Patchwork, and we're going to activate it again, see if they got a second Judge Man. They do not, so we're going to flip that up. And here we get the Sabres because we can clear out their back row with it. So we're going to go with that, and I'm keeping the dog just so I can use this extension. So we go Chainlink 1 Tiger, Chainlink 2 Penguin, and this is to play around Solemn Strike. If they have Imperm, they have Imperm, and then we only have to play through one more back row. So they conk here, which is very funny because we have the Edge Imp Scythe that we hit off of the vendor, which protects it. So, and if they had gone up after the vendor, we searched it. So you can very often put like back row or Eldlich players into just like completely no-win situations like this. And again, we draw cards. I pitch the dog because we can just like get another one later if we want. And here I'm going to go Penguin Dolphin. Send the wings. I'm going to wings draws first just to see, and they scoop. They're like, there's no way I can play through this. And for the record, I can definitely make lethal here because I have the sheep and a chain and a sabres I haven't used. This is super easy, like Accesscode, pop a bunch of stuff, Dugares over a Raiden. But yeah, so that is an example of how you might maneuver through back row. I'll definitely post more replays in the future as I continue to play in the format, because again, this replay, there were like a couple disruptions, but I definitely want to find more examples of hands where you're like pushing through a lot more interaction and trying to play around more specific things. But hopefully those two gave you a good idea. For fun, at the very end of this, I've got a remote duel that I did with Aki playing Sword Soul. I'm going to grab that VOD, pop it in, and we're going to go over that replay together. So I will see you in a bit. All right, and we are here at the remote duel match that I have had with Aki, and we did this during the MBT Subathon modcast hours. So I am playing Fluffal, obviously, with basically the current list that I've had through this whole video, and they're playing Tenyi Sword Soul. I have the video a bit faster, so just because there's this video's been quite long already, so the action's a bit sped up here. So they're starting off with Ashina. They're doing the play to make a level 8 here. I have open no hand traps, so this game 1 I don't end up breaking the board, I do end up losing, but this will showcase that even if you don't see hand traps or non-energy cards, you can actually chew through quite a lot of interaction. And there's a key thing here that if I had made the proper read, I could have sequenced a bit differently and made something happen a bit differently. I was basically playing around blackout when there wasn't a blackout, so I would have probably thought about how to bait out different interactions in a different way. So I did that little hand wave there, and oh, there's Joseph on camera now. MBT. Anyhow, so they've made the level 8 here. Doing their search. So this is what should have clued me in to there maybe not being the trap, is that they used to search on a monster. But when I saw 2 set, I was operating under the assumption that they had it. Yeah, so here comes the Moye. Moye summoned Draco Berserker. Berserker, you can play around in this, but it can be wonky, so you have to be careful. You'll see I sequenced the very first play in such a way to try and, like, fiend it out. Desires. You know how it be. We get that +1. So I got the Banish. No idea what the draws are here, but they do have level 6. So they'll reveal pitching, I think, yeah, just a spare Ashina. Grab a token, and they make the level 10. So it's the Chichao, the level 10, Draco Berserker, and 2 set. So I gotta chew through a lot with the 6 cards here, but we're gonna see what we can do. So, and again, I am assuming that one of these is blackout, just how it be. And 2 cards in hand too, so. Pretty solid open, but you'll find that we can push through most of this actually. So opening up, I'm just clarifying some effects here, and I'm thinking about how I want to chew through this. This game I don't have it, but in game 3 you'll get to see Golden Lord in action against the Sword Soul matchup, and you'll see just how absurdly silly it is. So here, I know for a fact I'm leading with Royal Penguin's Garden because I have that in hand. And the idea is Garden going for Penguin. I need Penguin in order to bait some specific forms of interaction. And as well, the Gardens on field early means that I can maybe try to fiend a blackout earlier than would have normally happened. So Aki's just given a quick rundown of effects. Because at this point I was not as familiar with the level 10, but I knew what the level 8 did. Aki's still explaining. Cue Simo Taki Man meme. They are still rolling. And this is definitely a tricky one. Again, I'm basically thinking, oh my god, there's a second set, so I have to chew through quick effect, on field monster negate, a banish of one monster activates this effect, a banish from grave and field via the level 10, a pop 2 in the trap, and whatever that other set card is. So I'm thinking, I've got my work cut out for me, but I'll give it a shot. So we leave it with the Penguin's Garden. Obviously it's a consistency piece to add Penguin. They don't really have a response to this. They can't activate the trap because I don't control enough cards for them to pop. And again, the idea with, I actually do have a second Penguin in hand. The idea with leading with the Gardens here is so that I can try to fiend a blackout much earlier, but that ended up being a bit of an error, so I might have played this out a bit differently. We'll normal the Penguin here. They got nothing on summon. I will Penguin effect. They're going to Draco Berserker. And this makes sense. I'm basically, like, I'm normal summoning the Penguin here because I have a chain that I can pitch with something. And I know that, like, they're going to do something to Penguin here. They choose to Draco Berserker it, which is, I think, a misplay because I can still special dog because Penguin will still resolve. They're thinking about the level 10, but they can't because they don't have a card in my graveyard from the banish. So dog effect, and they have Chalice. All right, I'm like, okay, all right. I've got one unknown quantity out of the way. I'm pretty sure the other set is a blackout. Oh yeah, they drop Chalice. I'm like, all right, cool. I'm like, all right, I'm operating with knowledge. So now all I have left to chew through is both of the Sword Soul Synchros and a Blackout. So I go Bear here for vendor, set that. And here I think it's kind of weird that they don't use the trap, because I would think they would want to keep vendor off my field even if it gives me a search, because I've already used all my extension. But match of knowledge can come in handy here sometimes, and turns out they didn't actually have the trap. So a lot of my decisions were based around that, and I kind of messed up the board break here. So here I'm going to flip the vendor. And I'm thinking, yeah, so I'm going to pitch chain here. And this will get me patchwork, which is quite nice. Driver off the top. Going second, hitting off a vendor is more important, just because any extra bodies or more stuff is extremely valuable. But you should never like plan around hitting off vendor unless you have a Sabre set up. It's always just a nice thing. So here the discard was fine, because it got me patchwork, because I had the chain to pitch for value. So then we go patchwork. They don't seem to have a problem with that. So here I get Poly and I get Edge Imp Scythe. Getting Edge Imp Scythe with Patchwork going second comes up a lot, specifically because of the destruction prevention. And again, I'm thinking there's a blackout set, so I want to be able to protect my whale from that destruction. And here I know I'm not getting Sabres. Going for Tiger here doesn't make sense, because I already know that whatever fusion monster I summon is probably getting negated by the Chi-Chow. So Whale can chain to the Chi-Chow, still get the attack boost, and send the repair to the graveyard, which will be important for extending further. But as you can see, I get outplayed because the level 10 can just banish the repair, and then I'm kind of screwed. Yeah, so I do have the second penguin here, and having the second penguin comes up a lot for situations almost exactly like this. And penguin can maybe dig me into some ways out. And I can chain block the penguin here to avoid a possible Ash in hand, or any other disruption set. Chainlink one penguin, chainlink two whale. So the Chi-Chow, and then a chain whale targeting itself. An important note here is that because whale can apply the attack boost to any fusion monster and not itself, even if its effects are negated as chainlink 3, as chainlink 3 here, because whale is chainlink 4, the whale will fully resolve, sending the repair, giving itself the attack. And then even after its effects are negated, so it won't pop, but it does keep the attack boost because it can apply to any fusion and not just itself. So that definitely comes up a lot, where if you know you're playing into a quick effect monster negate, like something like an Imperm or Chi-Chow, you can chain whale to make sure you still have the big body and you've still sent the repair to extend through the board. So it definitely comes up a lot, and sometimes people will just negate it a second time, so you can chew through a lot of interaction there. And now for future fusion plays, I have the Edge Imp Scythe in the graveyard, so that is something to keep in mind. I've got that protection from destruction for my fusions. So I'm thinking about my discard here. It is Gamma. This is one of the notable disadvantages of Gamma, is while it's an incredibly strong hand trap, drawing into it mid-combo is not good. I still really like it because in the format it's just quite strong. Being able to take something off the board is quite relevant against a lot of matchups. And as well, it's one of the best protections against Droll that this deck has. And as Lyralisk Tri gets more popular, there will be more Droll. So keeping in mind that, I quite like Gamma. But if you find that this specific thing is a problem for you, you can either just cut it entirely and play something else in the slot, or you can play Triple Tactics Talent instead. Good going first or second tool, and probably would be the best thing to fit in this slot if you choose to not play Gamma. So they're using the level 10 here. They're going to take out my repair and my whale. And this kills most of my extension. As you can see, I do have a Hail Mary, but it's not going to go that well here. You'll see that Aki is explaining to me that I am screwed as my whale gets banished. The repair being gone was big, because I have a FB goods here. And that means I can't like FB goods into something more meaningful, like a dolphin, for example, to try and even get to like wings and do more interaction digging. So banishing the repair was actually a big problem. So there's maybe a universe where I don't actually send the repair with the whale there, and try to get it engraved some other way. Like with that, for example, foolish burial goods to maybe send the repair. So here with the vendor, I get sheep. And I think I know that I made a misread as soon as I summon the sheep here and they don't activate the trap, because it would be a no-brainer to just clear those bodies. I'm thinking, okay, well, they probably don't have it, but I'm going to make Phoenix. I'm going to see what it was. My other card in hand is another dog, so it's mostly useless. So I'm just bouncing. I'll summon the chain. Make Phoenix discard. My 2 cards in hand are dog right now. I mostly just want to see what the set was, just to see how far I got. Yes, we go Phoenix. Phoenix Effect Pitch. And I see that it is Pot of Desires. I have been thoroughly owned. If, again, I've said this a couple times, but if I had known that that was a Desires and I was not operating under the assumption that was a blackout, there's probably a universe where I don't send repair and I can make some other plays. But, you know, that's just kind of how it be. So we're on to game 2. So game 2, I'm going to be going first. Feel quite good about this. And you'll see that I actually get to play through a lot of interaction. Well, not a lot of interaction, but I play through interaction hitting one of the key cards. All because Royal Penguin's Garden is a very, very, very silly card for this deck. So we decide not to side just because Aki doesn't have one prepped. So we're basically playing a whole bunch of game 1s, which I quite like because I can show off how good the main deck is. Aki adjusting their lighting. Yes, you'll get to see in this match, Fluffal is not a deck that dies to one hand trap. You open a lot of hands that can push through interaction. So I'm digging through my box. I'm like, oh, are we siding? Nope. So I just pop it back in my deck box there. And we will shuffle it up and go to game 2. Aki's doing a pile. I'm like, yeah, you know, I should do that too. So piling it out. Shoutouts to the game mats. We've got Aki's got the striker set up, and I've got the Trinity format, Trinity Dino charge playmat, courtesy of the Trinity format admins. And we both have the Chalice monthly field centers. Mine is obscured by very bad lighting, but if you want some Chalice field centers, compete in the Chalice monthly. They're always a total blast, and the field centers are gorgeous. So we are finally done our shuffling, and we're going to get on to the match here. 469 viewers at this point. Nice. All right, they've opened the hand, and I'm going to draw my cards. I'm looking at my hand, I'm like, all right, what's the best thing to lead with here? And I'm going to see if I can fiend an Ash on the Patchwork here. And, yep, they've got it. So, a lot of people here would be like, oh, that's it, Fluffal, like, Ash on Patchwork is done? No. We've got plays. So, Royal Penguin's Garden here is going to add Penguin, and then we're actually going to use the second effect of Royal Penguin's Garden here. And this is where the second effect of Penguin's Garden is such a good extension play with stuff like Vendor Chain. So, we'll reveal that Penguin, pitch the Vendor. Now, vendor search, important to note that that Penguin does drop to level 3, so you can't do the Bahamut Shark into Toad line, but once that Penguin hits the graveyard, its level will change. So you can bring it back and it'll be a 4 again. But if you have another copy of Penguin, you can normal summon it, and that copy can be level 4. Just depends on what you want to do, and what else you've got in the hand. Normal Penguin, Penguin Effect Special. Dolphin. And now that Dolphin has resolved, I am like 99% sure that they don't have any other interaction. Aki does play a little bit of Fluffal themselves, and they know how powerful Dolphin is. So they're thinking that Ash on Patchwork was the play, and it probably was here. It led the board to be less insane than it was. But so we've got the wings there, and here is something that I like to do when I'm playing this deck. If I have spare cards that are not going to come up, you might as well just pitch them off for vendor. Here I'm linking it to Cross Sheep because I am bold and I'm thinking, yeah, you know what? I'm going to draw Frightfur Fusion. And at worst, I'm thinking I'll probably just be link climbing into an Apo anyway. If you want a safer version of this play, you could link into Dagda, activate the toy vendor to get the artifact scythe out of deck. And then if you draw into a fusion play, you can just make Cross Sheep with the Dagda and another monster. But we're remote dueling on stream. I'm feeling greedy. So I pitch a spare Patchwork and I hit Golden Lord. That is huge. Golden Lord again becomes that like an extendo body, but it also means it's an extra vendor search here, and it's extra deck thinning. Because here, if I lead with the, I'm thinking about it, but if I lead with the wings, and I don't see a Fluffal name off of my draws, I can grab Bear to pitch to set vendor. If there's something to discard that's valuable, I can discard, and then I can go Lord to send that vendor to summon and get the Fluffal name that I want to continue my combos. So I've drawn my cards. I'm going to do my search. Here, I believe I do grab the Bear. Yep. Bear to grab vendor. I believe I have a spare card to hit here. Yeah, so we just do a half cut, flip up the toy vendor. Pretty sure I go vendor, pitch Gamma. Yeah. Yeah, and again, because I got stuff on the field, that Gamma straight up is not going to come up. I might as well pitch over vendor and see, and lo and behold, there's a chain. Now, I've already activated a Patchwork this turn, but having the chain is very nice for combos, and chain means that I can grab Frightfur Fusion to trigger this Cross Sheep. So that's quite a good hit. So I think I Golden Lord here. I might do it after, I'm not quite sure. Been a little tiny bit since I've seen this replay. Yeah, I do the Lord here. Yep. Oh no, I Frightfur Fusion first. I guess that makes sense. Oh, I remember why I did that now. So this is actually a nib play around. So I have Imp Scythe in my hand, and the Artifact Scythe in my hand as well. So the reason that I'm doing the setup this way is so that if I get hit with Nibiru here at any point, like say on the summon of Penguin, for example, there's the nib token, right? I can go. I have the nib token. I can go Lord, send the vendor, and make Dagda that way, because Dagda just requires any two monsters with different names. Doesn't matter if it's effect or not. But I decide that they don't have nib after Penguin because they would have used it to prevent the Penguin from summoning Dog and Dog getting another search. So I'm like, you don't have it. Let's jam. So I do that setup. I go Penguin effect to special Dog effect. Here I get Octopus. This is going to be a strange line, but because I'm against the Tenyi variant, I do want to set up a Dweller just to stop stuff like Vishuda, because Vishuda will screw up my day, especially if they have a board breaker on top of a Vishuda. So here I decide to get Octopus. Sheep is much less value here because I don't have an Edge Grave because I had to banish the chain to start up fusion plays, and the Edge Scythe is in my hand. So getting Sheep here would cut off a form of interaction that I can hold through board break tools. So I got Octopus. And here, in order to be able to use the Octopus to get a Penguin back to hand, I do a little bit of the some classic big brain strats. So we're going to overlay for Dweller, and we're going to Dweller detach Penguin so that I have a Penguin engraved to add back with Octopus. Now, if we hadn't drawn the Artifact Scythe, I would be linking off the Golden Lord and the Whale into Dagda so that I could set the Artifact Scythe, but because we drew it, I'm thinking I can just make a much larger Apo. And I can keep the Dagda and the ED to do link climbing or something. Yep, so I just clear them off. Big for material Apo. So, through Ash on Patchwork, we have got Apollousa, Dweller, format Apollousa, Dweller, and a set artifact Scythe, and I've got the Edge of Scythe and the Penguin in hand. And here, so I go Dweller, and they're thinking about this. Again, I quite like Dweller into the 10E version of this matchup. It stops Vishuda. It means they have to activate stuff like Ashuna from hand if they want to do the hand banish. And it turns off that horror recovery. It turns off the graveyard effects of the monsters. And yeah, so in terms of a backup plan, it's pretty solid. Here they're thinking, here I'll just spoil it for you. They have an imperm. They're thinking if they want to hit my Dweller or the Apollousa. And they're thinking like, oh, I know that set card is the Scythe and you have the Edge of Scythe in hand. I'm like, I don't know what you could be talking about. They're completely right though. Aki always has the reads. So Aki's like, okay. I care a bit less about the Dweller. So I am going to imperm the Apo here. I'm like, sure, okay. I still got an Edge of Scythe artifact side set, so they had better have like a Chalice or they're screwed. They're still thinking about it. They're like, their hand is actually quite 10E heavy, so I think they're thinking about hitting the Dweller here, but they realize that they can't summon the 10Es under Apollousa, because those summons are actually activated effects in the hand. Yeah, so they activate the Ashuna, just like Fiend and Apo activation, and then hit me with Imperm. I'm like, cool. So they'll link that off into the Monk. They were thinking about activating the effect, but they forgot about Dweller. So they think about normal summoning Ecclesia, but they decide to take it back. And I'm like, yeah, sure. We're just doing a match on camo. We're testing it out. We're solid. So here they activated Hara just to get extra bodies. Yeah, and so this is another lesson that we can learn with this matchup. So as they activate the Adhara here, Adhara summon is good. Something to note about Edge of Scythe is you should always wait for your opponent to commit at least 2 cards to the board if it is possible. There are some situations where you have to fire early, but this way you can play around another copy of Infinite Impermanence on your artifact Scythe, because Whale will clear one of their cards and they'll still control one, so they won't be able to activate Imperm. A couple of other things that setup specifically plays around, but that's the main thing, is you don't lose to a straight Imperm by waiting until they commit 2 cards to the board. So I fire that Edge of Scythe here, and Aki's like, I knew it. So, Chainlink 1 Penguin, Chainlink 2 Whale. I'm going to pop my set artifact Scythe. Here I choose to pop the Adhara. They're not going to be making any crazy link plays, so I don't care that much about Monk being on board, as well as the fact that they can't activate any of the 10Us in Grave anyway due to Dweller. So in case of like avoiding a random level 9 synchro, if they have the Chalice, I pop the Adhara. Because again, I do not care about Monk, because they can't activate any of the graveyard effects anyways. Penguin gets me some draws. I pitch Poly here. I'm like, I'm pretty sure I drew Patchwork FB goods. I'm like, I could keep Poly, but I think I'll pitch the other one. So that ended up being pretty solid. Take a quick look at the grave, trigger Scythe effect, and they do not have the Chalice. So this is functionally the end of the game. There's essentially nothing that Aki can do from this position. They go Ecclesia. They basically just decide to wall up here. Ecclesia, I'm like, yeah, sure. They go Ecclesia effect to special. Pretty sure they special Moye. They're digging, they're digging, they're digging. Yep. So I think they, oh, that might be Taie, sorry, yeah. Taie, so they managed to word into some token. Yeah, and then they don't realize that they forget about the Dweller, so no Adhara for you. So here I'm pretty sure they just pass on this. So now I'm basically just digging through to see if there's some way that I can OTK, and I feel like I've got it because I have FP Goods. Like FP Goods Patchwork is just crazy, but they tell me to wait, and as I send vendor, it will turn out that, let's wait to see it, they have got the Ash. So I'm like, all right, I actually don't think I can OTK here. I can put them in top deck mode, but it gets a little bit dicey. Because I had to use Frightfur Fusion as a combo piece here, which means I definitely can't OTK. It basically gets kind of wonky, and I don't have a good way to make a rank for. So here I decide to snag Sabres. Because while I don't have Fluffal names to use, I can go grab Sabres, and Sabres can sit in graveyard as a possible extender for next turn. But as well, I can use the Sabres and Poly to go into a Sabre-Tooth to revive a whale to get more bodies on board. So we'll see that I add that. I'm basically, most of my thinking here is I'm basically trying to see if there's some way I can Fiend Lethal, but without being able to make a rank 4 to Dugares, make a big-ass whale, and jump over the monk for like 9,000 damage, I can't quite do it. So I basically just try to make some big bunguses. Poly pitch that. I've got no other cards in hand. But after I summon Sabre-Tooth, summon Whale, obviously, I have not yet used the Golden Lord effect on my graveyard this turn. So I'm going to Golden Lord send the Penguin's Garden, and that comes up a lot to have that Penguin's Garden there. And so I've got 4 big dinguses and an Imp Scythe engraved to protect them from destruction. So I'm pretty confident that even with like a Sword Soul top deck, I've still got this one in the bag. They're jamming. I'm like, do I have anything else here? Nope. No cards in there, nothing. So I just do as much damage as I can, swing over everything, and hope they don't top deck. But I don't even think there's a top deck that really gets them out of this. They can't use any of the 10U effects in Grave, so a lot of their top decks are dead. It's like Mo, Ye, and Tai Ye are maybe the only cards they can draw. Well, Emergence as well, maybe, but even then, they still end up in a position where their trap card can't even destroy 3 of my cards. Because I've got the Scythe to stop the fusions from being destroyed, and the Golden Lord can't be destroyed. Well, even if they pop the Golden Lord, I have a way to send it. So yeah, I just swing over all this stuff. I'm pretty sure they top deck an Imperm, because I do win this game, but we can fill the suspense up and see what goes. And so again, this was a full board setup through Ash on Patchwork. So this isn't a deck that just loses to a single interruption. You open a ton of hands that can push through Valor on Penguin, Imperm on Dolphin, Ash on Patchwork. There are a lot of different hands that beat interaction. So they're like, at her out of Shuna, but then they realize that it can't because they don't control a non-effect monster. And they flip the impermanence. Like, yeah, all right, so we'll clean it up, shuffle them up, and go to the next game. So again, we're not siding, so this is game 3, but it's kind of like another game 1. And this will showcase the power of Golden Lord going second into boards. It's always super addicting whenever this happens on camera. While we're here, again, massive shoutouts to MBT for having me on the subathon. Doing the modcast was super fun. and I got to showcase a lot of what Fluffal can do and have fun with a lot of the other crew. Aki, shoutouts to Aki, also spent an unreal amount of time on the modcast, entertaining the folks over in the EU who were watching in the late American hours. So big shoutouts to everybody who worked on that team. It was super fun to organize and do stuff for. So we got that pile shuffle going. Again, we're still rolling. Aki is piling out, piling out. So, I guess one other thing about the Sword Soul matchup in general, I've talked about it a little bit as we've been coming through, but specifically with their level 8 synchro, the Chichao, you want to try and fiend that out as early as you can, because if they hold it for the fusions, you don't get a lot of the value off the destruction. You only really get value off of stuff like chaining whale to it. So if you have poly plays in your hand, leading with them is not always the move, especially if they've got stuff like the trap set and you know it. You want to try to fiend out that negate so that your fusion play, like maybe like a blowout tiger or a whale to pop your own toy vendor or something, still resolves. So that is something to keep in mind, is you want to try to fiend that specifically out, because that's the only thing that really causes you any trouble when you're chewing through their board. The trap doesn't really matter. You have ways to protect, and the other cards don't really matter. It's that quick effect on-field monster negation going second into it that can cause you trouble if you only have access to one fusion play. So again, they're leading off with the Ashuna. They're still jamming. And I've got the Vessel. Vessel is such a crazy card, by the way. I'm glad that it is finally getting a time to shine. Foolish Burial plus Rhoda seems pretty legit to me. So they're thinking about what to send here, but I'm pretty sure they send a Taiye. Might be a Moye. Can't quite tell from this angle. They're thinking about that, and I think they're thinking about that send because they can revive it with a Shaman later, and you'll see that that does come up because I've got some interaction here. They're thinking about what to lead with, the specialty Adhara. And they banish the Ashina to do a search. Or I banish Ashina, so they special the 7. So here I say I'm thinking, so here I don't want them to make the level 8 early, because it will mean that my Imp Scythe into Whale won't do anything. So I have to think about the best way to clear this. And so I'm thinking, all right, I can force them into a Shaman line. But the problem with popping the Vishuda here is if they have like level 6 guy or something, or they have another normal summon, the Adhara could maybe make a level 9 synchro, and I really am not interested in dealing with Chow Fang setups. So I'm like, no, we're just not going to do that. So I've used the wings, and I go, well, I'm going to opt to clear the, so I chain whale targeting itself, obviously. I'm going to opt to clear my own whale, so that I can keep the Edge Imp Scythe in the graveyard to protect my fusions going into the next turn, rather than keep the whale on board. And clear out the whale, and again, I pop the Adhara. This cuts off most Chow Fang setups, unless they want to do level manip, depending on their hand. And it means that their Vishuda doesn't really do anything, unless they're playing a level 11 synchro. They're not making anything with that Vishuda aside from Shaman. So here, their hand isn't quite good enough to do anything else. They don't have a normal summon that really does anything, so they have to do the Shaman line. And I'm like, sure, yep, that works for me. Yeah, so they're still looking at their hand, they're fiending through, but they realize that the only choice here is to make the Shaman. Yep, so there comes the Shaman. They're going to Shaman pitch a spare Ashina, and they're going to special summon that Sword Soul monster that they sent with the Vessel. That's why Vessel is so cool, is that it also ends up being a hand trap playthrough in situations like this. I really like how the 10E build can shift its way through interaction in this way. It's a very cool setup, and the 10E cards are just kind of awesome. So they do that. they're thinking about revealing here because it gives me known information, but they do decide to reveal the blackout. So they do the synchro. And they'll make the level 8. They'll do the level 8. And they get the draw here. So notably, Shaman locked them out of activating the effect of the Sword Soul monster there, because it wasn't a 10E from the extra deck, but they can still activate the graveyard effect of the Sword Soul monster. So that's the thing to keep in mind. And set 3, and I'm thinking, all right, well, this is going to be a weird one. I know that I had seen Chalice earlier, and I had seen Imperm earlier, so I'm thinking, all right, I know there's a black out there. It's probably some combination of Imperm Chalice, or maybe there's one bluff, but I'm operating under the assumption that it's like 2 just monster negates in the form of Imperm or Chalice. So here, I'm going to take some very unneeded time, because I had not read the effect of Shaman in ages, to read Shaman just to make sure it didn't do anything silly that would stop me from breaking the board here. But it didn't, and then I was like, all right, cool. This is the end of the game. And you will see just how strong Golden Lord is going into a setup like this. So I'm looking up the effect of Shaman, reading it, and being like, oh, this is just an enabler. This doesn't do anything on my turn. Okay, sick. Still running through the description of that. Just as an aside, while we're waiting here and I'm trying to fill out time, I really like the Neuron app. Anyway, Vendor Pitch Lord, targeting the synchro. This is super, super broken. So a lot of the Sword Soul setups through like one hand trap, for example, Imp Scythe, will end on only 1 worm. And in this case, they're ending on 2, but it's 2 that Lord can run over. So here, I think they banished the Dingus to set up plays for later. But it doesn't matter to me. So I've just sent it away, and then I go Vendor effect, and Vendor's going to get Bear. So now they've just got the Shaman on field, but because we have Lord here to send the toy vendor that we're getting, they can't activate the trap here, because at no point am I ever controlling more than 1 card. Which means that, because in order for them to activate the blackout, I have to control 2 cards. And I only ever control 1. And then Golden Lord can just go to battle phase, run over the other worm, and now they just can't activate the trap at all. This comes up a lot for the Baron de Fleur level 8 synchro set blackout boards, where if you open Lord Vendor, you just go Lord target the Fleur. Fleur has to negate. You go Vendor add Bear, Bear pitch to set Vendor. And then Golden Lord send the vendor to search whatever Fluffal name you want, and then you just attack over the level 8 synchro with the Golden Lord, and then they can no longer activate the trap card, and you just combo in main phase 2. Just use any of your fusion to clear the Baron de Fleur. So Lord going second into the Sword Soul matchup is extremely strong. So yeah, again, I've run over it, and now their trap is dead, and they've only got 2 other sets, so I have to play through 2 possible interruptions here. Activate Royal Penguin's Garden. Again, just an incredible consistency and advantage tool. And again, I held it because I never wanted there to be 2 cards on the field at the same time, so that the trap was never live. I'm shuffling it back up, just thinking about my sequencing here. I'm going to normal summon Penguin for sure. And importantly, this is why Imp Scythe is so strong as a hand trap. They have the Chalice for my Penguin, but because I have the Repair, I can extend into Dolphin here. And Repair again was sent off of the Cruel Whale on my opponent's turn when I activated the Imp Scythe to summon it. So here we go, Dolphin. I'm going to attempt a Dolphin effect because I've got the Vendor engrave. And they're going to hit me with the Imperm. And I'm like, okay, you have no cards in hand. I know that's blackout. I'm just going to make Bahamut Shark. And the cool thing about Bahamut Shark into Toad here is if I detach the Dolphin, I can just go Toad, add back the Dolphin to try again. I can link off the vendor to send the... Well, not link off the vendor. I can link off the Lord to then send the vendor to summon it back as a OTK tool or link extender to get a vendor search. So in like a super like minimal like grindy game like this, Golden Lord is crazy. So is Toad. Toad being able to add back Penguin or Dolphin is completely just unreal. So here, this game is over. My opponent is top decking. They have to draw something. They're like, no, pass. I'm like, okay. If I draw literally anything, it's like game on board. and I top deck Dog. So it wouldn't have mattered either way. I could just I could do link plays at this point to make the dream work, but yeah, I just summoned Dog, and Aki will concede there. So that will be the end of this video. I hope this showed some matchup knowledge. Again, huge shout outs to the Necrofusion Discord in the description. Please join it. If you have any questions, let me know. Thanks. See you guys.